Let's sing it together. Open your eyes to a new world that you never knew existed.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Right back to where we started. Took a shower between the last show and here because I needed that. Welcome to the show on YouTube exclusively. Got a lot of you guys jumping over from the Rumble channel. Excited for that. So I put a post up yesterday, a video, just explaining what I'm going to be doing exclusively on this YouTube channel because I've been gone for 4 years and it's good to be back. It's great to be back. I'm going to be going through a lot of stories that we've covered, that I've written about, investigations I've been a part of, and expose all this stuff to people that may not have heard this before because this was a censorship platform and you couldn't talk about certain things. So we're going to have a bunch of videos coming out over the next, couple months. Who knows how long this could go, talking about elections. We did one yesterday on the Curling v. Raffensperger trial and the computer science expert that hacked voting machines right in front of a federal judge. And then the federal judge kicked the can down the road and dismissed the case after 8 years on standing, essentially telling people you have a right to vote. You don't have a right to ensure that your vote was counted accurately. That's what her ruling said. I kid you not. So we're going to be unpacking a whole bunch of this stuff. Election fraud, January 6th and the Fedsurrection, COVID. We're going to be talking about all this stuff and it's going to be controversial. People are not going to like some of the things. And today we're going to do a story that is very important to me. I was in DC on January 6th. I was visited by the FBI. I did not go to the Capitol building. I was saved by a friend of mine, thankfully. But still, they tried to, coerce information out of me, showed up at my place of business, not realizing I was the business owner maybe, and that I was not going to be intimidated by that. And you were not going to intimidate my boss because I was my boss. And that was their tactic, to intimidate people in the public opinion, in the public profile, in the public spotlight. They wanted you to feel less than human being. And we're going to be talking about a lot of that stuff. And so today on this show, I've got a very good friend of mine that I'm going to be bringing on, two good friends of mine. And so me and Alpha have talked about his story quite a bit. Okay, he's my co-host on Badlands on SitRep. He co-hosts a show with me on Badlands Daily on Thursdays, and he co-hosts Y-Chromes with me on Monday afternoon. And I love the guy like a brother. He's a Marine. He's a badass dude. He's a law enforcement officer of 14 years, I think. 14 years. Give me a thumbs up. 14 years. And he's all around one of the best people I know. And his story is absolutely incredible. And so I'm also going to bring on another friend of mine that's local down here in Florida that I met about 5 years ago when I got started on this journey, the podcasting and everything, and watched him grow his own podcast into something that's absolutely incredible. It's been great. And him and Josh, you guys might have seen me on their show before, Stuck in the Middle. So I'm going to bring on these individuals. First, I'll bring up here Eli. Eli, how you doing, brother? Good to see you, man. You're muted. Amateur hour. It's okay.
Sorry.
It happens like all the time. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Fantastic. I did mission complete there. I just came back from the No Kings protest, so I'm a little shell shocked at the experience. But aside from that, I'm happy to be here. Thank you, and I'm excited. I'm excited.
All right. So Eli is a reformed burn bro progressive that is now on the Trump train. And I like to think I had a little bit to do with that.
For sure, no doubt. You and a few others had a major influence in me just asking questions because I was not.
All right. So I brought Eli on again because he's never heard Alpha's story and probably hasn't heard a lot of the J6 story. So I want to get a fresh perspective as I'm sitting here. I'll primarily be conducting the interview, but if Eli at any point, if you want to jump in and ask a question, feel free to jump in. So without further ado, my co-hostess with the mostest, my brother from another mother of a different color, my Marine brother, Alpha Warrior. How you doing, brother?
What's up, YouTube? How long
Right?
is this gonna last?
We shall see. Alpha, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Over here on the West Coast, so it's still coffee hour for me. But no, happy to be here, man. It's times are changing. Hopefully.
Yes. So, real quick before we get started, Alpha is also back on YouTube. So I want to give you an opportunity to plug your channel. So where can people find you on YouTube?
For while it lasts, you can find me at the Alpha Warrior Show on YouTube. I think that's what it is. It's been so long.
It is. It is. I knew that. I just wanted you to say it. It is at the Alpha Warrior Show and use the little @ sign for it. You can search it or you can just type youtube.com/ampersand the Alpha Warrior Show. And Eli, where can people find you on YouTube?
Mostly, I'd hope that people just continue to champion discourse at Stuck in the Middle on YouTube, youtube.com/stuck in the middle, something like that. And I also have like a vlog style thing called Progressive Patriot, although every day I want to rip that progressive part right out of there. But that's me.
It's okay to be progressive. That's okay. That's okay. You can't be crazy.
You know, I've fallen so far from where you used to know me, man. Or not fallen, I've kind of risen up. We'll go with that.
Oh, I know. We're going to have conversations in the future about this. We are definitely going to have more conversations about this. I got to pick your brain and get the Eli exposed out there. So Alpha, you were arrested on January 15th?
Raided
on January 15th.
Arrested on Inauguration Day.
I am going to I'm going to hand it over to you. And if you want to share like any videos or anything, I know you're far more organized than I ever could be. So Eli, this guy right here, we travel to events like around the country. We have for Badlands, we have events throughout the country. And we were in Arizona and he throws me his room key and goes, "Hey, go grab my truck keys. I wanted to go buy some weed." I'm just going to throw that out there. I wanted to go to a dispensary. And he's like, "Grab my truck keys. They're in my room." So he gives me his room key. I go up there. I go in his room and it looks like a fucking serial killer, man. Like everything is just laid out like perfectly. His laundry is folded neatly. It's in, I don't think it was in the drawers. It was on top of the table. Just everything is immaculate. Meanwhile, you go in my room because I'm there with my wife and like everything's just all over the place. Like there's a pile of laundry, dirty clothes, mainly hers. And then there's my stuff, which is not always neat either. But so Alpha is OCD when it comes to organization and all that stuff. So I know you're going to, yeah, just a little bit. I know you're going to have all this stuff. So I'm going to give you the floor, brother. And Eli, jump in anytime with questions. I'll do the same.
Yeah. I will pull up the video. So when you're ready to share that, we can drop that. I was going to try to upload it, but it's too.
Well, let's first, while you're doing this, let's give your background here so that people understand the context of, who you are as a person. You were a Marine. You were an 0311 infantry Marine, just like myself. You were in way before me, 2003.
Yeah. Joined a few days after 9/11, went to war in 2003.
Okay. So you went to Iraq. You were part of the initial invasion into Iraq.
Yep.
In 2003, you were an LAV guy, little chicken shit driving around in armored vehicles like a little bitch.
Haters are gonna hate, but that's okay. Listen, just we gotta address it. We gotta get it out of the way. The only difference between a grunt in an LAV and a grunt that's not in an LAV is we just don't have to march as far on our boots because we have these 8-wheeled vehicles that do it for us.
I saw a video last night, like one of my Facebook reels of Mount Motherfucker, and I was like, oh god, should I play this on Sit Rep for Alpha because they're talking about how crazy Marines are because they run up Mount Motherfucker, and I'm like, I'm not going to give Alpha that win. Not going to give it to him. Not going to give it to him. All right. So then from there, Alpha, you went on to become a police officer in California in Riverside.
Riverside County for the city of Cathedral City.
Okay. And then you did that for 14 years. You did undercover narcotics. You did some high speed, low drag type stuff. You received the Medal of Valor, which is the equivalent in law enforcement of the Medal of Honor. It's a very, very prestigious medal. You received that. Unfortunately, weren't you in a shootout your first day as a Proby?
Yeah. So just to rewind just a second for the Marine stuff, and I got both things lined up when we get into it now, is while I was out there, because we were babies back then, one of the coolest things that I was a part of was a rescue of a very important person. At the time though, we just knew it was a VIP. And after we rescued this person, because we have the helmets on the headset, so you hear all the chatter, and they're like, "It's Oliver North. It's Oliver North." So a lot of us young babies are like, "Though, I don't. Are we cussing on the show? We're not cussing on the show.
You can cuss, yeah, cuss, man.
Just to emphasize, the way we felt, we're like, "Who the fuck is Oliver North? Why is everybody so excited about this?"
Man.
So the older, I was a baby,
Oh,
bro,
okay.
like a baby. And so the older Marines schooled us immediately. But anyways, he was out there doing a documentary. So if you go and research Oliver North's documentary from 2003, you're going to see the entire time it's done from the air, from the, being in the Blackhawks and stuff. But there's a portion of the film, because he ended up staying with us for a few days, where there's ground coverage. That entire ground coverage that you see in that documentary is from our company. And so got to actually take a picture with freaking one of the Marines, Oliver North, in theater out there. So that was pretty cool.
That's not the picture. I thought that was.
No, that's not the picture. I can look for that. I have it on my phone.
It's all right. It's all right.
So, but I wanted to share that because that was it was an awesome moment to be a part of that, because there's a lot of bad stuff we can talk about for days on end, and a lot of the cool stuff, or the stuff that we would find cool, a lot of times the audience would be like, "Why do you guys think that's cool?" But I think that's a story that everybody can be like, "Oh, that resonates. That's kind of cool," especially if they know who he is. And then so getting out, and for me, I knew that the Marines was going to be a short-lived venture for me, because my childhood dream was always to go into law enforcement. I knew that's where I was going to end up, and so I did. Ended up getting into the academy. From the academy, got picked up right away and joined the Cathedral City Police Department out in Southern California. It's near Palm Springs, for those that have never heard of the city. It's a city of about a little over 80,000 documented. It's probably somewhere around 100, 115 with the undocumented for now. And we said there would be some things not everybody would like, but that's okay. So I go through training, and my first day off of training on my own, I do what like every rookie cop does. You take your black and white patrol car to the car wash so it looks all pretty. You have that shiny stuff you spray on the tires, right? And then I go and I drive. Well, go in and I get my coffee, and then I start driving in front of the Stater Brothers. Why Stater Brothers? People want to know, because Stater Brothers has these big 10-foot mirrored windows in front of it, and you just drive back
and you see yourself
with your shit on, and you're just like, yeah,
you're so vain.
I did it. Yeah, I made the cut for now. And yeah, shortly after that, the call would go out, of an estranged ex at this lady's house. I knew we were there from the day before. It was our Friday as a team, so I knew all the senior guys were back at the yard doing, all the paperwork, getting ready to wrap up the week. And so you do what a rookie does, get on the radio, Charles 573, I'll be en route. I was around. I mean, I was literally about less than a minute from it, anyways. Drive up to the house and do all the good rookie stuff, man. Like, just like in the Marine Corps, you do everything by the book. You're not complacent or routine yet. So you're just like, check, got to do this, check, got to do this, check, got to do this. And I probably,
you were, go ahead. I'm sorry. You're spot on. I know what you mean. Like our first patrol, like first time in Afghanistan, I remember every fucking thing was like, "Hey, we got a guy with a wheelbarrow over here." It's like, yeah, that's how they move their crops around. Your sensitivity, your alertness is on a level that it will never be ever again in your career. So sorry.
I know. Absolutely.
It sounds like, if there's boxes to check with the OCD, I think that goes hand in hand. Perfect for you.
The OCD definitely amplified it, man. There's no denying that. So drive up, park a couple houses down, run the address or run the plates of the vehicles parked in the driveway. And I take pause as I wait for the dispatcher to come back with their turn on the plates, because there was two. And sure enough, dispatcher comes back. And I remember that at the time, the dispatcher's name's Andy Andersball. He ended up committing suicide a few years later. It's a very tragic story with him. But he comes back, and even though I'd only been in training for a few months, you learn kind of how people work and their voice inflections. And he was a very senior dispatcher. He probably had about 20 years at the time already. And I remember he comes back on the radio and he gives the first plate, and then he kind of goes, and the second plate. And it was kind of that to where it caught my ear. We're like, what's that about? And he says, comes back to the suspect, and he gives the identifying information on it. But it was long enough to catch my ear. And the reason that little simple thing is important is because it's, like I said, it leads to a series of flags that saved my life, along with going to war. Going to war saved my life in this one, because had I been just a rookie cop, never experienced anything before, I probably would have been flying through that, to impress your partners. But because from combat, you learn that when those little hairs come up, or that uncomfortable feeling in your chest, you listen to that. Some people call it discernment, some people call it your guardian angel, whatever the case may be, you listen. And so I was approaching the front door as all this is kind of coming in sequence, and I said, you know what? The last place they said he was at was the backyard. So let me check the backyard first, and then I'll make contact with the homeowner. And so the side yard, north side of the house, had these huge RV gates, these mesh iron gates. So you could see through it, but it's not perfect because you're seeing just through the hole cutouts that are there. But anyways, I see this man coming around the corner, and I'll use his first name only, Thomas. And so he sees me, I see him. I'm like, Thomas, come here. I want to talk to you. And he's like, no. And so I'm like, Thomas, come here. I want to talk to you. And at this time, you're already like, dude's gonna run. Like I know this may sound weird to people, but you're smiling. You're just like, yeah, first day, second
Foot
call.
pursuit.
We're going into a foot pursuit. Let's do this. So I start grabbing the handle to open the gates from the middle, and he's just like, no, like crazy. And he's facing me at this time while he does it. So he turns around and he's spinning. So I'm like, called it. Here we go. So now I'm rushing to open the thing, but he did a full circle. And this time, as he's coming around the circle, his hands in his waistband, and he starts doing this.
Oh, that's the sign.
Followed by boom, 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 boom. Right. So I'm not a small guy, but I try to make myself as small as possible when that happens. And you blade off because you want to make yourself skinnier, but at the same time, it's not a full blade because you don't want to. Our vest doesn't cover everything here,
Only
so
got frontal coverage.
yeah. So you're kind of just canted. So if something hits you, there's just a lot there. But anyways, he does that. Run to the corner of the brick wall that's right there, get my position, try to exchange with them. He ends up coming around cuts back into the corner of the house. So neither of my shots would have hit right there. So then I'm like, by this time I'm on the radio. I'm like, shots fired. Probably sound a little bit more high pitched and girly than that, but that's okay. So as I'm running across the front of the house, because they had this big old glass pane window in front with the curtains drawn open, I can see the lady and her daughter there in the front and in the living room. And I'm like, open the door. She's not opening it. I hear another gunshot and glass break. And so I even get on the radio. Now, this is the crazy part. And Ken, you've been in shootings before. So I know you all, at least, and maybe some people in the audience probably get this. Different senses react differently. And in this particular situation, it was my hearing. My hearing went bionic to the point where I even told dispatch, he broke the rear slider. Like I was able to distinguish the sliding glass, pane versus, a regular window or a kitchen window or a bathroom window, because they're different. And, and I can hear the cavalry in the distance coming, which is, that's a good sign, hearing those sirens coming. And so I'll kick open the door, grab her, put her and the daughter behind me, got my gun drawn down the hallway. Ultimately, we get outside the house and everybody's there. We surround it. Allied agencies are there. The birds are there. SWAT ends up getting there, and because he's not coming out. And finally, when they make entry, this is probably maybe 4 or 5 hours into the evolution of this now. They go, and that last gunshot that I heard, what he actually did was he was against the sliding glass door, and he had put the gun to his chest, and he shot himself. So he went through the glass broke. Now, the wild part of that story, and I shared this one a lot in details because it's what started the story of a lot of
The
stories.
wild part, you've yet to get to. Okay, all right, I'm strapped in.
So, was he had a murder-suicide note in his pocket.
Oh, wow. So you saved the family.
He was gonna kill his ex and the little girl, his daughter.
Wow.
And so I remember, by this point, I'm in the command post, and there's the sergeant that was in there. He's retired now. I'll share his name. The guy's a freaking legend. His name's Ed Cologne. Worked for LAPD, LASO for a couple years before he came to our agencies. But he's one of the old salty dogs that I got to learn on, like real cops. And we're in there, and of course everybody's coming in and checking on the rookie, like, is he green in the face? What's going on? And I remember he got pissed. And the reason he got pissed is because Ed Cologne was also a Marine. And he goes and he tells the guys, get the fuck out of here. He's not like you. He's a Marine. He's going to be fine. He's done this shit before. And literally covered me there. And then everybody got out and he's like, you're good, right? Well, shit, who's going to say no at that point?
After that.
Solid, sir. We're good to go. And that was my very first day, second call for service. And that would set the tone for the next 14 and a half years.
All right. So that's an incredible story. I hadn't heard it in that much depth before. The murder suicide aspect of it, it's incredible. So from there, you go through your 14-year career, very distinguished career. You go do all sorts of high speed, low drag stuff, like I was saying. And then you end up being relieved, right? Or put on a suspension.
Yeah, I can fly through that part real quick.
Yeah, let's fly through that real quick, just so we understand, what your past was, because, you were law enforcement, but the media painted you as a troubled cop, right? So let's go ahead and go through this.
Yeah, and that part of the story establishes the motive for the quote unquote confidential informant,
right,
that we'll talk about later. But yeah, just from that, in that 14 years, there would be 3 more shootings. My partner would die March 18th of 2011 in front of me. I'd rescue 2 other CHP officers from a burning vehicle in December of 2017. I'd rescue a drowned baby that was underwater somewhere between 4 and 7 minutes in July. Yeah, July of I'm trying to think of what month comes before April. June, July, August,
before
April.
March.
March. So yeah, that would have been, because it was April Fool. So March. So Marines and calendars, Marines and math. I apologize.
I'm a Marine too. Come on, man.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It kind of took 2 of us, but we did great on that. Teamwork, right? Make the dream work.
Yeah.
And so in March, I would do CPR on a toddler that was drowning. And these would be the things at the tail end of my career, because once we got into after April, so this would have been April, May, around May, June timeframe, I ended up getting, July actually, because it was around 4th of July, I would get notice that I was on an internal affairs investigation and pulled off of the streets. And this is after, working gangs. This is after being a detective, doing undercover gang works. Like you said, Brian, I had a very stellar career. And in that 14.5-year career, I'd only been written up 2 times. Once during training for a TOK issue, and then once for crashing a police car, which if we have time at the end, I'll share, because it's just funny as hell. But everyone is going to crash a police car at least once if you're doing the job right. And so, all of a sudden I find out that while I'm in what I considered, the climax of my boot dragging portion of the career, I'm put on IA investigation. And then into that IA, I would find out that it was, pending termination. And just like most, government jobs out there, there's an escalation of discipline, and the allegations that they're being made against me was just like, these aren't even terminal offense, but yet this is the route they're going. And what had happened was in December of 2017, we had a change of leadership. And so a very great chief that we had was now going to be replaced by the under chief or the deputy chief, who at the time we were excited about, because on paper, he was like one of us. He had did SWAT. He had been part of tactical teams. He had did the undercover work with narcotics and gangs. I mean, it was like, we're going to go from one great chief to another. That like we kind of saw the next 15 years as going to be great for us. But I remember in briefing the day that he took over, the first thing that he said to us, he goes, "We're going to fix a lot of things that are broken around here." And I'd been with the agency since 2005, and so you're kind of looking like, this is the highest morale has ever been. This is the most efficient this department has ever been. What's this guy talking about? And of course, in a very short window, because I was also part of the Police Officers Association board at the time, we would go to fight with this guy on a lot of things that he was trying to do that were inappropriate. But what kind of had put me on his target list was months preceding that, when he was the deputy chief and he hadn't taken the reins yet, we had a triple homicide. And I'm sorry, no, it was a single homicide, triple suspects. Triple homicide was there too, but that ain't what kicked it off. But anyways, long story short on that one, he had wanted me to write warrants on these guys. We didn't have the probable cause. In the state of California, to this day, I'm still considered an expert witness on warrants, search warrants, and on gangs. And we didn't have it. And he ended up going and surrounding these houses while me and my partner were at the DA's office to get the paper signed. Paper got declined, as it should. And he kind of had mud on the face because he had our tactical team surrounding these guys and we didn't have the paper to deal with it. And because it was 3 different locations, he had to call in, assistance from another agency. So this wasn't just going to be internally embarrassing, it was going to be externally embarrassing. And him being a new chief, who was to blame on that one? Well, it was Detective Luna to blame. So that's kind of what had created a lot of this in my speculation. So then from that point, I ended up getting terminated on January 7th of 2019.
Let me, Alfred, let me interrupt you just real quick. What you did there was the ethical thing to do, right? You would have been violating Fourth Amendment rights if you would have doctored this warrant in some form or fashion. And it seems like there was a push to kind of coerce you into doing that. Does that happen in law enforcement? And you don't have to dime anybody specifically out, but does that kind of stuff happen? Are there officers that they know they can go to that will do that for them?
So here's what I'll say. I've really struggled with this. And I think me and you have had this conversation because people have asked me, will you go back? And I mean, like I said, if you go to the books my mom has on me from a kid, you put the little school picture and what do you want to be when you grow up, all the way to preschool. It was always cop, 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 cop. Movie Top Gun came out, wanted to be a fighter pilot for 2 years. Shout out General Quas. And then after that, it was right back to cop, cop, cop. So this is something that's like, it was in me to do. So I struggle with this because I used to, not all my family is on the same side of the law that I am. I've had family gone away for serious time, including crimes up to attempted murder, so I get it. I didn't grow up in a silver spoon area. The reason I was very good at it being a gang cop is because I grew up in it. I just wasn't one and not because I was better than anybody. It's because I had cousins who were gang members that just wouldn't let me do it. They respected my parents too much and they kept me out of it. And so I used to have these arguments with these family members throughout life police are corrupt. You guys are dirty. They'd use the unpleasant jargon to name cops. And we'd fight over this stuff. And the reason we fight is because I was like, I've been a cop 5 years. I've been a cop 8 years. I've been a cop 9 years, 10 years, 11 years, never seen anything corrupt. And I was telling the truth. I could put my hand on the Bible today. Never saw anything corrupt that happened in front of me. I'm not talking about like on the news or anything. I'm talking about like with my agency, with me. And so I saw this and I was just like, no, people are crazy. Yeah, it exists. You see it on the news, but it doesn't mean that it's systemic in our industry. And for me, I didn't witness corruption, lies, or fabrication in police work until I was the one on the receiving end of it. And so, and what do I mean by that? I ended up, because I was a detective, my attorneys, were, one of them was prior law enforcement. So we really had a grasp on the way these things, the inner workings are. So we were able to pick up on things, and they did things like, instead of redacting like you should, which, it means you put a black box over a set of information. So everybody knows there's information there, but you're going to have to get a judge to release it. They were doing things like, whiting out stuff or putting a piece of paper over it, then doing a photocopy just to make it look like nothing even exists there. So this way you wouldn't request information because you wouldn't even know it existed. But because some of them had got sloppy in that investigation, they didn't realize that we had these documents already. And so when the investigators working for my attorneys went through this stuff, they're like, what's going on here? And so then, of course, once you realize that, you start to comb through everything. And we did. We started to uncover perjury and all this stuff. So at the time, it's happening. I'm like, well, they're doing this because they're trying to target me specifically. That's why they're going through this. It's not dawning on me yet that, maybe there's a larger issue here. And so as the time goes on, I started to ask me this question. I don't know the answer to this, Brian, and that's why I'm sharing it. I don't know if if this corruption was always there. They just knew you can't do it in front of Luna because this is not how he rolls. And I'll arrest the cop on the spot if I see him doing something that defaces our badge. That's what it meant to me. Or if that was the first time that I experienced it. And there's the detective side of me that thinks for someone to go through these things, probably not their first time. But then there's the other side of me saying, well, if they were doing it that often, why would they be so sloppy in the way they went about it? And so it creates this kind of internal dilemma. So I don't know. But because of how I was treated, because of what I witnessed, I don't know if I could ever go back.
I do, if I may. Just a question about, I guess, your own opinion. This new chief, when he came in and started doing what it is he ended up doing, did you start to get a sense that his actions were more that he was concerned about PR, like more of the public image, media image? Because you seem to have had a very positive opinion of him before you started to actually encounter him. So was he just going in for that? Because he doesn't sound like he was of, the people, so to speak.
Yeah, there's a couple things. So yes is the short answer. To expand on it a little bit is, so for those that are curious about him, his name is Travis Walker. I don't mind putting his name out there. And he was the captain of the San Bernardino SWAT department when San Bernardino had the terrorist attack. So, and I've had one-on-one conversations because I was his lead gang detective. So I've had these conversations with him where he would tell me the old stories. And listen, when you have these guys tell you the old stories, police work was done a lot different 30 years ago. There was a lot of stuff that could happen. Not that it was illegal. It was just tolerated more than now. The society doesn't really tolerate certain things now. And so there is a separation between stuff that was tolerated versus stuff that's illegal. And in between both of those things is this gray area. And have I seen people operate in the gray area? I have. Is it illegal? It's not. Could you argue it's more, the moral and efficacy of it? Yeah, you could have an argument with that stuff. But for me, when it came to things like writing paper, it's either you have it or you don't. And up until this point, to go back to the homicide story, there's the Outpost one. If people want to look up the story, you can look up, Outpost Market Cathedral City murder. And I had never had a search warrant denied. And I wrote a lot of paper, and that was one of those bragging things that you had. My paper's always gone checked off, and the reason is because I always operated with either I have it or I don't. And so if I'm taking paper to, especially when I was in gangs and detective, you're operating with the senior DAs. So there's this threshold of expectation, because in Riverside County, and things may have changed now because it's been probably 6 years now. You don't go straight to a judge. You go to a DA first, and then you go to a judge. Outside of an exigent circumstance, we have that kind of working relationship with our DAs to make sure everybody's covered, because the ultimate goal is conviction. And so because of him being a new chief, was he after PR? Yes, because he had a lot of other chiefs, that our prior chief was friends with. The Coachella Valley it's not massive, but it ain't small either. And so he was trying to establish this presence of who he was. And so yes, PR did play into that. But the other part was, the prior chief, who was a great man. He's actually the chief. He came back and returned to be the chief. He's the chief now. He had told a few of us, in confidence in the meeting at the time, is, hey, he's not ready yet, so, help him, is essentially what the gist of that story was, because this chief was retiring about 5 years earlier than expected. And I won't, that's his business, I won't go into that. And so this is kind of that situation that we're in. So I wasn't the only one that was pushing back against them. And as a matter of fact, one of the sergeants at the time was pushing back against him and also got terminated. And so this is when I'm talking about that paperwork that was redacted, there were some people that were facing disciplinary issues, and it was every single one of us were pushing back against him on what he was doing. And 2/3 of us were part of the board from our our police department. So this played into the stuff that was being like removed instead of redacted, and that's how we caught into it. Now that same sergeant conceded, and this plays into the FBI story, had conceded to what that chief was demanding, and I refused to. I was not going to say that I did something wrong that I didn't do. Like, I was just like, you're crazy. It's not going to happen. Like, that'll never happen. And I think I've proven that. And so all that kind of played into who this chief was. And just so everybody knows, when you look up Travis Walker, you're going to see he was fired a few months after firing me, and because of sexual assault violations on coworkers. And people say,
Drenching in irony. Wow.
oh yeah. And well, here's the thing. I'm telling the city while I'm going through this internal affairs investigation, when I find out that they're shooting for termination, I'm telling the city, you guys hired me from day one. You know who I am. I've been in 4 shootings as a cop, not one shooting where you guys ever even sued in. And you go look up cops involved in shootings, the departments are always sued. Even when they're in the right, the departments are always sued. And I'm saying I did my job by the book. You guys have never been sued in one shooting. There's no history of disciplinary issues. If anything, it's accolades after accolades after accolades. And you guys are, I'm telling you, this guy is lying and he's corrupt. I go, and you guys are going to find out the hard way.
And they did. Couple months later. So all right, so let's kind of move this. I want to start getting into the J6 stuff, but I think that was important because the way the media portrayed you, especially some of the smaller local outlets in your area, they portrayed you as a J6 or a MAGA extremist, but also as a cop that was terminated from the job because of corruption and blah blah blah. They didn't paint you in a favorable light. And anybody that knows you knows that you will give the shirt off of your back for anybody out there that's in need. And you go through some of the things that you were able to accomplish in your career, and it's just stellar. You're a very good human being, and nobody got that side of you. So let's get into how, because you weren't in DC on January 6th.
Can I comment to that real quick?
Sure.
So one, yes, they absolutely dragged my name through the mud and publicly. And when your friends, your family, your kids' friends are going to see this stuff, it's devastating. Yes. It's devastating because they really painted a negative picture. Here's what really caught my attention. When I was looking, it was back before Facebook, it would, deplatform me years later and stuff. When I was looking at the local news on Facebook and some of these other platforms, in the comment section, which, everybody tells you don't do it, but you're going to do it. You want to know what the world thinks of this. There were people that I arrested that were commenting on there, guys that were gang members, and said, hey man, I don't like the pigs, but Luna never did me dirty, and you would see this pattern of people that would talk in there is, hey, when I was a kid, Luna caught me with weed. Like, he had this talk with me and he didn't arrest me, he didn't do this. Like, he gave me a chance. And it was crazy to see that 14 years worth of, experiences with people that you don't remember, you end up forgetting. Some of them you'd be like, oh, I do remember that, but you don't remember, but it stayed with them to the point where they saw a cop, someone who was on the other side of the war of them, like crooks and cops aren't friends. But yet these people saw the way I operated enough to go publicly and be like, hey man, I know some cops that are dirty. That's not one of them. And I think that, along with some other things at the end of my career, I think God facilitated that because I was going to need it, because it was going to be a rough set of years following that.
All right. So to get into the J6 stuff now. And guys, I'm telling you, every time you think you have reached the kind of the pinnacle of Alpha story and it's all gonna, like, nothing could surprise you any further, something else is going to come up in this story that's going to surprise you further. It's one of the most shocking stories that I've heard around J6. Before we get into that, Alpha, I brought Eli on for a reason. I wanted somebody that doesn't know as much about J6 as we do, and can look at this from a fresh perspective. So before we get into it, Eli, I want to ask you, in just a couple minutes here, just summarize where you're at on January 6th and what you think happened on that day.
It's pretty easy for me. I mean, even from the jump, I thought it was within the rights of the people, given the context of what happened during that election, and through my own homework, more from like a faux journalistic perspective, learning all the context that went into it and how the people were treated. I do believe there were provocateurs. I do believe there are 3-letter agencies involved into creating so much chaos that would be convenient sound bites and clips for this war against Trump and the administration, and that a lot of the J6ers were more so victims than they were patriots. I mean, they're patriots through and through. Please don't get me wrong, but the way it ended up, I think that their rights were violated through and through. And I never am sad about what happened for J6 as a people, as a country. So I hope that's somewhat clear.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. All right. So on that note, let's get into it, Alpha.
Yeah. So to answer the question, no, I was not in DC on January 6th. I was home, Southern California, with a newborn, 2 months old, in my lap, watching it all unfold on TV like everybody else, being moved like everybody else. All emotions were different for all of us, and took to social media to address my feelings on January 6th, which led to this post, which is absolutely spicy, but definitely not illegal. And it reads, it's dated January 6, 21. Will you fight, bleed, and maybe even die with me as we take on the evil that is now stealing our nation? I'm a Marine combat veteran, law enforcement veteran of 14 years, and my allegiance is to God, family, and country. I'm ready. Are you? Time to patriot the fuck up. God wins. There's a picture of me in a tactical uniform, a picture of me from being out in Iraq, a picture of Mel Gibson from the movie Patriot, and a picture of the American flag. So why go ahead.
So I just want to go through, I think the interview you did with Kyle on this was probably one of the best explanations of why that tweet right there is absolutely 100% protected constitutional speech. And there's certain levels that it would have to rise to if it was a direct threat, if it was, something that was actionable, for law enforcement to investigate this. And given your background in law enforcement, and maybe if you want to summarize, briefly what Kyle said, what would be required of this post to make it a viable threat? Yeah.
So like I said, spicy, 100%. There's a lot to dissect in this one. So in California specifically, and every state will have this in some form, and it'll be very close to what I'm going to say. We have a terrorist threats clause or penal code. And to charge someone with this, there's certain things, again, you got to check the box on. Somebody has to make a direct threat at a direct person or entity or property. Following that person has to say how you're going to go about that threat. The next thing is they have to have the ability to do that. And then there has to be some overt action to facilitate that. Like you can't just have, 2 out of the 4 or 2 out of, you have to have all these things. It's a little more detailed than that, but that's the gist of it. All that has to come into play to charge someone with this. Now, again, those are the minimum requirements. If you're actually talking about making the arrest or actually doing a report or charging someone or getting a conviction, it gets into the conversation of jury instructions. There's more that goes in. That's why people don't understand is with newer cops, they kind of operate off of, I just need probable cause. And that's why you'll see a lot of cases don't get convictions, because they didn't realize, well, I met the threshold for probable cause. I didn't meet the threshold to be, convicted, by a jury of your peers, without reasonable doubt. And so as you go through your career and you get into detective, you start operating off of jury instructions, which if you're thinking about, the Joint Terrorism Task Force of the FBI, which is who ended up raiding me and arresting me. And, the detective that was part of that Joint Terrorism Task Force, John Candias from Rialto Police Department, these are people that have that kind of experience already. They understand. None of the people that showed up at my house were rookies or 5-year cops. You're talking everybody that was 10-year at a minimum. So this is not a lack of experience or knowledge. This is deliberately operating in an area that is, this portion, you could argue gray, or you could argue one way or the other. And I understand, that part.
Just for my own generic curiosity here, how long after J6th did this raid occur?
So this was 9 days. So raid was January 6th. This raid happens on January 15th. They were investigating me at a minimum, because to this day, they won't release the full report or the search warrant to me or my attorneys. Yeah, I know.
Is that allowed? Clearly, is it what?
It's not. Don't trust me. You're gonna.
I'm telling you, Eli, this story is going to blow your fucking mind. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. You haven't even begun to hear the half of it. All right, Alpha. So just real quick before we get into the raid, what else was the probable cause to initiate the case against you?
That would be California red flag laws. In California, like many other states, if somebody makes an allegation against you that you're a threat to yourself, a threat to the public, California can come and in a civil manner, because it's not criminal, it's civil, can come and take away your firearms in lieu of due process. So what happens is you're
but this is all secondary to the tweet, right? The red flag laws is instigated by that tweet, which is protected First Amendment speech. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, 100%. That the tweet and the confidential informant is what initiated the situation, and then the abuse of the California red flag laws is what they use to kind of put the hammer, on me for this. Because at the time that this is happening, I'm the only J6er that is being prosecuted that wasn't present. Now, in the course of that year, there would be a second person that wasn't present that it would happen to as well. But at the time this is happening, 9 days after January 6th, I'm the only one. So to finish that off then, so they use the California red flag laws so that when they executed this search warrant of my home, they were going to be able to take all my firearms away from me. So in other words, you're surrendering all your firearms, you're getting a property receipt for it, and then you're getting a court date that says this is when you can come and tell the government why, you're not a danger, you're not crazy, and to take it. Now, the other crazy part here is they didn't just take my firearms. They took my firearms, ammunition. You could argue that they're one and the same, but then they took my ballistic panels. They took my electronic devices, phones, computers, the things that it's like, well, that's not covered by the red flag laws. So if you're relying on the search warrant to do that, which is what they were arguing, at least, on the surface level, but again, we don't know because a lot of these things were denied. And once we get into the story, I will tell you guys about every motion that we did. Because remember, the advantage that I had compared to a lot of J6ers, even J6ers that were cops, was I was not just a cop. I was a detective. And I wasn't just a detective. I was an expert witness in California on search warrants and on gangs, which is ultimately what is the approach that they're using with MAGA. And a lot of people don't understand that, but I immediately saw, what was going on here. And on top of that, I've worked with the FBI. I have an award from the FBI signed by James Comey. I've had a very interesting career. And so I think that, and we'll get into it with the story, is they really screwed up when they came this way.
Okay. All right. So let's you want to play the clip? You think it's a good time to play the clip of your neighbor's?
Yeah, we can play. I don't think there's audio here. Maybe
No, there's
probably.
no audio.
Yeah.
We played this before. Oh, remove that.
Here, my brief question is that why they took your electrical devices, because they were trying to frame you as being a part of some greater organization? Probably a dumb question, but is that their argument?
That's one of the things. So it's, when you look at law enforcement through the corruption lens, like let's say I was what they were trying to say, was a dirty, corrupt cop. There are a lot of things you can do to get in the door of a home. To put this is, and me and Ken have said this before. I can get into 80% of the homes in the United States and find a reason to arrest somebody.
Yep. 3
law-abiding citizens, and people have no idea very simple things that they're like, you can arrest me for that? Yes, you can. And granted, a lot of those things we would consider chicken shit, in law enforcement. But something as simple as, how many of you Gen Xers and boomers out there, have VHS tapes of NFL recordings from your favorite games or your favorite movies? Yeah,
Gen X representing right here. Absolutely.
Yeah, wobbler. That you can go misdemeanor or felony depending on how many and when. And there's a lot of things like that are out there. How many of you still have your prescription meds, but the label came off and there's no label on it, and you have a controlled substance in a bottle that's not identified and who it belongs to? And that's where you can get into. There's this. That's why trust is what is the most important thing between law enforcement and the community. You're given these powers. They're not inherent to you. They're given to you by the people that or pay your taxes, for you to work in law enforcement. It's you're given the authority to take life when warranted through trust. And what we've seen, and this can be a whole nother show, is there has been a systemic change in who becomes a cop that is starting to create these issues. And I got to witness this in my career, and I really saw this starting to really become prevalent. I would say between like 2009 and 2012, there was a purposeful movement on what kind of cops were being hired. And then on top of that, there was a very deliberate handcuffing on the way we were allowed to train these guys. And that is going to have a ripple effect that's going to last a very long time. And we're seeing over the last, 7-8 years, we're starting to see the consequence of that, because at the same time that this is the new breed coming in, that prior breed is retiring and going out. And that's a big issue for law enforcement right now.
Okay.
All right. So let's get into this clip. Now, I want to remind you,
zero criminal history.
Yeah, I was about to say
zero criminal history. Never been arrested in my life. As if people would say, "Man, you were a square." Indeed, I was. My Bonnie and Clyde moment was in 2003, coming home from Iraq. I got a tinted windows ticket. CHP Officer Rice. Still unforgot, bro. Still unforgot.
All right, here we go. So narrate what's going on here.
Yeah. So my house is the house at the top of the screen that they're driving into. You're seeing the soft vehicles coming in with the FBI SWAT team. This is not a local.
Wait. Stop. Hold on. What time is it right now?
It's probably about 5 in the morning.
Okay. Now, this was also a very important thing that Kyle brought up in your interview with him. And it's important because raids like this, there's an approved time that they have to conduct these types of raids. And I think Kyle had said, and he's a former FBI agent, that it had to be between 6 a.m. and I think what was the
yeah, two things that are extra just from what we see here is you see a SWAT team that's serving the warrant. And
right.
So within the body of the warrant, there is an entire, I won't go into this so much because this is, SOP stuff. But there's an entire matrix of things that you have to articulate to a judge, that a judge is going to say, okay, we're going to escalate this to a SWAT team because this is what it is. This is an escalation of force by using a SWAT team. The
right.
second thing that you have to get signed off, which is what you're asking, is called night service. Any search warrant that is served between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. has to have a judge sign off on that as well, because that's considered an escalation of service. And the reason that's considered an escalation is because when we do things in law enforcement, everything's done through the purview of the understanding what would a reasonable person do, or how would a reasonable person react in this situation. And so when you do night service, you're starting to move outside the scope of what's considered reasonable. Because if a reasonable person would probably be like, yeah, if I hear an explosion or a loud thing outside my door or a bunch of guys yelling, I'm probably going to grab a gun to defend my home. And that's why when you bring this and present it to a judge, we're talking anywhere from at least, I would say, 3 to 4 minimum, and very rarely did I see that, to probably an extra 10 to 15 pages to articulate why this is a necessity.
And by signing off on that, they're basically saying this guy is so dangerous that we have to get him while he's in his bed, get him with a quick hard knock, something that is, we can't get him during normal day-to-day operations when he's wide awake, fully cognitive, and capable of, responding to us showing up there, essentially.
I'll give people a real example, because I was on a tactical team, and I have served we would consider this, a dynamic search warrant. And I've applied for using SWAT teams, and I've applied for using night service. And you're talking, because we anticipated a gunfight, essentially is what I'm telling the judge. We're probably going to get in a gunfight here. And we need the advantage in this situation. And that's what the judge is saying it. And just so people can understand what the threshold here is, we have served search warrants on gang members where we didn't do night service. So we've done it on people with criminal backgrounds, criminal history. We know we've arrested them with guns before, and we don't always do night service. This is something that is reserved for the most dangerous of suspects.
Okay. And all of this is over a tweet. So here we go. 2 vehicles pull up loaded with fully tacked out agents, fully automatic rifles, the whole kit and caboodle. This looks like we're going to hit a VIP in Afghanistan or Iraq. There's a 3rd vehicle on the right there. That one looks like it is up armored.
Yeah, that's the Bearcat.
Okay, so that is an armored vehicle. You got somebody in the turret. Now what are they doing?
And the camera will adjust a little bit, I think. It's been a while since I've seen it. But what you're seeing right now, they're going to the back of my house to take their positions. There's a sniper that's getting up into the turret of the vehicle. Now they're putting the spotlight on the front door, that front window that's there, because you see my truck in the driveway. There's a truck that's half on the street, half in the driveway. And if you look right on front of it, at the very top of the screen, that's my truck. And so that's the garage that's there. And then to the right of my truck, to the top right corner of the screen you guys are watching, is my son's room. And just so everybody understands, this is January 15th of 2021. This is the morning that my son became a teenager. This was his 13th birthday, which they know.
They know, right? They have backgrounds, and everybody that's going to be in that house, they know everything.
Yeah. When we do search warrants, we 99% of the time, because there's always the exigency, but we do recon or surveillance of the target and the target location. We get the city maps on these homes, because people do upgrades to their homes.
Right.
And we go to places like, where there's a big lot or a parking structure, and we literally diagram out the house. And so we're doing, we're dry runs of going, this is where the living room be. This is where this is the amount of effort that goes into this in order to make sure that we survive it and find it. So they absolutely knew everybody that was in that home. They knew what they looked like. They knew their ages, everything. So they knew that this was my son's birthday.
And I want to point hold 1 second, Eli. I just want to point one nuanced thing here out is, we talked about them obtaining the warrant, during, let's call them after hours, right? Outside of normal operating hours, because of the exigent.
Yeah.
My words aren't working right now, because of the threat that you pose to them, right? But in reality, what you saw the vehicle all the way on the left, kind of in the middle, flip on his lights. Now it's dark out. It's 5, 6, in the morning. It's dark out. Anybody that lives in a home that's ever had an emergency vehicle drive down the street knows that those lights light up your entire home through the windows. Everybody knows what's going on at this point, or knows that something is going on at this point. They don't know what it is, but this is very deliberate, in my opinion, that they did it this way when it's dark out and everybody's going to see the lights. It's going to make as much noise and as much of a scene as possible, which to me personally, and I, maybe I'm off on this, but this is counter to them getting the warrant for this time, because they're doing essentially a soft knock on your house. When I was in Afghanistan, if we were doing a raid on a house and we were doing it at night, we were going in right away. There was no knocking. There was no alerting them that we're here. The whole point in us doing the raid at night was to catch them off guard so that they couldn't mount a defense. They couldn't mount a response. They're clearly not anticipating you or they're giving you the window to be able to mount a response. If that's the case, this should have been done. The car should have been parked, outside of view, no lights on, and the men should have gotten out, gotten in position, and immediately executed the mission. But that's not what they did here.
They're making all the requests for what a lot of people would term no knock, right? Because of everything that you just articulated, Brian.
And then they don't no knock.
But then they don't do it. So yes, it does feed into the theory, which I support, that this is meant to, embarrass the people that it's happening to in that community. It's the punishment's the process, and this is the beginning of that process.
Okay, so Eli, go ahead, man.
I was just going to add, as a complete layman, looking at this kind of activity, you're thinking that they're treating you like a terrorist.
Yes,
like that is an extreme response, and clearly intentional. So they're serving some greater propaganda here. It's disheartening, for a lack of a better term.
I completely agree with you. And what you're going to see in here in just a few moments is, remember, they know everything about the home. They know everything about me. They know that I'm a prior law enforcement officer, because at this time I was in the legal battle with my old agency, the story that I shared with you guys, and I had won the case. That's a very key part that what people have to understand. I had won the case, and a judge had ordered my immediate reinstatement and back pay. And in that 36-page award letter that the judge wrote, he used the term Luna was used as a scapegoat. So there's a very large wrongful termination lawsuit that's coming down the pipeline in addition to my reinstatement. So they know these things. In addition to that, they know that I own firearms. So, and the reason that plays into the situation is, remember, they've made 0 attempts to contact me during this process. So I'm just a dude asleep in his bed with his family and a newborn. And what you're going to see here,
no clue. You have no clue that you're being investigated.
No clue. And well, here, let me add this because it's important. Not only do I have no clue at this very moment that this is going on, actually, even to this moment with some of the cases, but at this moment specifically, I have major cases in court for potentially capital punishment cases on murder suspects from high-profile gang members. So when that's unfolding, you always have this concern, if they find me, it's going to be a gunfight, because if you can take out the lead detective, you definitely impact that case and can probably make it go away. And when you get into those kind of cases, you always have this, you're always going to have eyes behind your head, because
Yes.
you are a target because of the cases you're involved with. And not just locally, just so people understand, I was also a part of national investigations from gangs that are also international. So just to put it into the scope of some of the things that I was involved with.
So in other words, you're on high alert right now because of pending cases against you, thinking that there could be some action taken against you by the gang or somebody affiliated with the gang in order to get somebody off the hook on this.
100%.
Okay, let's keep going.
So what you're going to see here in a few moments is you're going to see the guy in the middle truck. You'll see him kind of go to the edge of that truck. And I think he might do it by himself, or there might be another guy that joins on them. But what they're going to do is it'll be hard to see, but if you're looking for it, you'll see it. You'll see something, his arm move like he throws something. And what it is, you're going to see a very bright flash of light that happens. And well, what's happening right now to the bottom right is they deployed a drone. So just so people know, in addition to the FBI SWAT team, there is now a drone that's above my home, which they won't give us that footage as well. And what they're going to do is they're going to throw a flashbang in front of the window of my son. Now, the reason that this is important when we see it is because you guys got to remember, I was a part of these teams. I was on a tactical team. I've served these kind of search warrants. A flashbang is an escalation that we do. When we show up to a house and it's not a no knock where we're just gonna we're there's the flashbang that just happened. If you want to rewind it, Brian, so people could see it.
I mean, of course, it's going to be an escalation, especially when you're somebody who's been on the other end of throwing that. I mean, that would make it more of an escalation because you recognize that.
So right there, that explosion is a flashbang being deployed in front of my son's bedroom. You know, so it's a very loud boom, is what just happened. And so what you're going to see is you're going to see my truck, which is in front of the middle vehicle. You're going to see like flashing against the light of the house because that's how powerful these things are. It set off the alarm to my truck. Again, I'm a gang detective, you know, that's getting reinstated here. So the alarm to my house is going off because you bet your ass my house has an alarm because of these concerns. So as soon as that explosion happens, the vehicle alarm goes off, the house alarm goes off. So now I'm being woken up out of my sleep because I just hear a loud boom, followed by my truck alarms going off, my house alarms going off. That is what I'm being waken up to. I'm not being awakened to, this is the police. We have your house surrounded. You know, residents of 1234 ABC Street, come out, you know, because that's normally what would happen. You would give that command several times on the PA system to get people's attention, you know, identification, the police, the police, the police. And then when people don't respond to that, because we know everything, you call the landline to that house. And when the landline doesn't get answered, then you start calling the cell phone of every phone that's in that house, because we have that information too, people, if you don't know. And then once you've exhausted all those efforts, and you're talking by this time, you're probably 2 hours, 3 hours into the evolution of this search warrant, then that's when you literally get on there and say, hey, if you don't come out, you know, we're going to escalate force. We are going to breach your home. We are going to do these things. And when that doesn't come out, then you are deploying a flashbang. So, you know, people understand that where this is going. And
They didn't want compliance. They wanted panic from you.
they wanted a very specific response.
Yes.
From
And
me.
they know that he's a combat veteran. They know he's been to, you know, Iraq in a combat deployment. They know that he has those pending cases as law enforcement, did tactical work and all that, has been involved in shootings. There is an element of PTSD that I'm sure they can assume that he has in some form or fashion. You know, one of the things when I first saw this, you know, I don't have any law enforcement experience, but I do have plenty of experience as a Marine infantryman doing this type of work. A flashbang has zero application outside. Like it does nothing outside of a home. Okay. It's just a loud boom. You throw it in the home and it's going to disorient you. It's going to, you know, your hearing is going to, your ears are going to be ringing. You're not going to hear everything. Your vision is going to be temporarily blinded. You're going to be in an adrenaline rush that shuts you down essentially. And that's, you know, a tactical advantage for the people that are going in. There's no tactical application to deploy it outside of a home as, you know, like a wake-up call. This was, in my opinion, and flashbangs are extremely loud. Everybody in that neighborhood heard that flashbang. And again, this, in my opinion, plays more into trying to wake up the neighborhood to come out and see what I believe is a public humiliation ritual.
I absolutely agree. Now there's an asterisk.
Okay.
In the evolution of dynamic search warrants over the last decade, I would say, you know, because of liability, it's kind of evolved into, you know, what we call surrounding callouts. You know, I was part of a tactical team specifically with gangs where we're one of the last, you know, what we call door kickers, you know, tactical units that exist where we don't really do the surrounding callouts. You know, we get to the point of breaching. You know, I've been point man on a lot of breaches. But a lot of the SWAT things have kind of adopted this surrounding call out. And that's why I kind of laid out that long scenario of that evolution that takes hours and hours and hours. So we will deploy a flashbang to show the escalation of it. It's time to come out now. But it's never in the history of my career, I've never seen that happen at the beginning of a SWAT raid or a tactical raid. Never. Because like I said, that's because you've exhausted everything. And now you're telling the folks, shit's about to get real. And you deploy one because like Brian said, the next one is going to be deployed when we breach. That's because that's what that device was designed for.
Right.
So just to add a little bit to that, Cam.
You don't
And
have
so
to
now
actually,
you can see the lights on my truck flashing because like I said, the power of those things.
a brief question regarding the flashbang. If you, and you don't have to answer this, if you do hopefully get your day in court, you will be allowed to ask why that particular flashbang was even thrown, right?
Oh, 100%. One of the things is, I don't want to get too far ahead of the story, but one of the
Yeah,
things
no.
that we want is I know what to request that other people don't even know exists when it comes to cases like this. And a lot of that material is what we were trying to request. So it's no secret. They know what I'm coming after, and they know why I'm coming after it. And as we get through the story, you guys will see the hurdles that were created for me and my attorneys, because there was no way they were willing to risk that information getting to the public.
All right. So now what's going on?
Yeah. So now, I'm waking up now on my nightstand, when I'll go to sleep, I have my old duty pistol. Because of all the concerns that I outlaid everybody. And then next to that is my phone. So when this all happened, I wake up and I grab my phone instead of my pistol. And to this day, I think that's divine intervention because I've never done that before, ever. And I'm running to the front door and I'm turning off the alarm panel. Now, my front door, you can't see because they have the light on it. That we rent an Adobe house at when it was this location. And the front of that door was textured glass. So even though you can't see through it, you can see silhouettes and stuff like that. So
Light.
yeah, so they have that light flashed on it. So it looks like daylight for them, but obviously I can't see anything from there. But as I'm at the alarm panel and I'm turning off the alarm, my fiance tells me, she goes, get away from the door, get away from the door. And I look at it and there's all these red lights that are zooming on the door. And so and Kyle provided some clarification here. So what I thought was a half a dozen red beams on it was actually one, but when that laser hit the texture, that's what kind of broke it up into several. But
I kind of disagreed with Kyle on that aspect because you can see there's at least 3 or 4 officers that have a weapon pointed in your direction. I mean, yeah, he could be right. It could have just been, whoever was the designated marksman on that particular, whoever was the sniper in the turret there. It could also have been other lights as well. So it's not conclusive, but he is right that it would refract that light into many different, it would appear like there's many different lights. That's absolutely a possibility. But either way, that's a very, traumatizing thing to go to your door not expecting anything and have lights on you.
Yeah, 100. Because just to put people in my thought process, as I'm getting out of bed, and this is why I say I think it's divine intervention, the first thing that comes in my mind is not the police. Because like I said, they haven't gone on the loudspeaker yet and said it's the police. That is yet to occur. As a matter of fact, it didn't. Well, I'll wait till I get to that part of the story. But at this point, that hasn't happened.
Okay.
And so the first thing that came to my head is either someone just crashed into my truck and my truck hit the house, and that's the explanation of that boom that shook the house, or this is one of those cartel teams that's coming to finish the job because they have the ability to do something like this. And just for people that don't know, I've been a part of tactical entries against people related to El Chapo. So that's the significance of things that I was a part of.
Right. Like they have the capability of having red and blue lights, without them contacting you, this has no context to you whatsoever. There's no, You're not automatically assuming, oh, red and blue lights, this is the police.
No. And that's the other thing too, is you got to remember those spotlights are so bright, they're flooding out every light that's behind them. So from my point, I'm not seeing the red and blue lights.
Okay.
It's that illuminated.
Okay.
What I'm seeing more is like a strobing type of thing, but I'm not seeing what I would expect, which is the red and blue.
All of
Well-
these compounding elements, they're clearly terrorizing you. That's what they're doing.
That's 100% what's happening here.
And,
so-
and just real quick, and again, to remind everybody, this is over a tweet, which then, led to California red flag gun laws, which are civil. It's not a criminal. You don't raid somebody's house because of red flag gun laws. And there's no context for you whatsoever. You have not been contacted by authorities. You've not been asked to cooperate, to surrender willfully, nothing. This is just one day out of the blue, 9 days after January 6th, you're sleeping in bed thinking about, your son's 13th birthday. That's that morning. And you wake up to this.
Yeah. And just so people understand, remember, this is 9 days after January 6th. So I'm one of the first raids that's happening in the evolution of January 6th.
Yes.
So this isn't 5 months down the road, 6 months down the road where we know, oh, they're raiding J6ers, they're raiding MAGA. That's not the case here.
Right.
Nobody had the suspicion, because obviously as time went on, people started to, be like, I was there. When am I going to get raided? When am I going to get raided? That's not the case here. That has not hit the media yet. That these are all the initial workups. Like I said, this is 9 days after January 6th. So
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, they utilized every single element of surprise at their disposal, given that they took you as a high value target.
100%.
You're going to see, Eli, like I said, this isn't even the shocking part yet. You haven't gotten to the shocking part yet. You're going to see throughout this story that they take they try and provoke a response out of Alpha every step of the way in this, throughout the 4-year battle that he's been in with these people. All right. So walk through. I saw your door open now. So, did you want to add something, Alpha?
Yeah. So before the door opens, I'm at the alarm panel. I've turned off the alarm. My phone rings. Now I get the identification where it's a dispatcher saying, hey, FBI, we have your home surrounded. We need you to come out. By this point, they've already known that I've turned off the house alarm because they can hear it. They know that I'm at the threshold of the house because they can see my silhouette at the door. This is all stuff they're privy to. Then they initiate the call. So then I put my AirPod in. Like I said, it's my son's 13. My son's turning 13. My other daughter is 11, going on 12 at the time. She's in tears. Everybody's afraid. So everybody's in the hallway. Our 2-month-old is still in the bassinet, in our bedroom. And I say, look, it's the police. Someone made a mistake. It's going to be okay. These are the good guys. We're going to figure it out. That's my thought process right now. Because again, last thing I'm thinking is J6.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing I'm thinking is swatting, because none of this shit has happened yet. None of these things exist yet. At least in trending and popularity.
Right.
So I'm truly thinking there's a mistake happening here. And so I put my AirPod in and I tell the FBI dispatcher, I said, hey, I'm speaking to you to an AirPod. My phone's in my pocket. There's nothing in my hands. I'm about to step outside, let them know I'm coming out and that there's nothing in my hands. And so then I can hear, because they actually had the phone conversation on their PA. I can hear her communicating to them, or at least the radio portion of it, but she's telling them this stuff. And so I slowly open the door. I have my hands like this, and I start walking towards these vehicles, which you'll see right now. And I start following their commands. It's a situation I'm very familiar with. I leave the front door open, so this way they can see everything behind me, because obviously I'm trying to ensure the safety of my family as well. And even though it's Southern California, this is the dark hour mornings, and it's January 15th. It's freaking cold. It's still cold for us here in California. And so now you'll see me, I'm backing up between the vehicles. I turn around and they go and they'll grab my hands and they'll put the handcuffs on me. And now I hear that famous click, 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 click. And it's not training. It's me having my freedom taken away from me for the first time in my life, and I have no idea why. I'm asking for the search warrant. I'm asking for the search warrant because they're saying we got a search warrant. I'm like, give me a copy of it. I want to see it. And they keep telling me, well, we will. I probably asked for that thing, 6, 7, 8 times over the next hour before this would evolve into the next couple steps.
So let me ask you, what, as this is going on and they're saying they have a search warrant, you've now confirmed that you are actually the target of this raid. It's not a mistake. What are you thinking that search warrant, the probable cause, or the justification for it? What are you thinking that it could be? How many cycles did you have to go through before you got to a tweet?
It was a few hours before we got, probably about 2 hours before we got to the tweet portion, not a little bit longer. I have no idea.
But I'm talking like your mindset right there as they're handcuffing you and saying, we've got a search warrant, and you got to be thinking, is this one of my cases? Is this, did something happen in one of my cases where I did something wrong and they think that I committed a crime or I'm complicit in something? Like, what's your thought process in terms of how they're justifying it?
So in the beginning, I'm thinking it's a mistake. They do confirm, Alfredo Luna. And I'm like, yes, this is me. So they confirm that it's me. But I'm thinking that they got the wrong Alfredo Luna. I'm not making any connection to my cases. I'm thinking these dumbasses went and did a workup on the wrong Alfredo Luna. That's what I'm thinking, because it's I won't say it's a common name, but you can go look up Alfredo Luna. There's some Alfredo Lunas
very common
that has a okay. I wasn't sure if it was or not. But there are some specifically Alfredo Lunas that have been arrested for some notorious crimes in the past, but I'm not thinking any connection to my stuff, because I'm telling you, my career was stellar. And everything for me is on the up and up, because I'm going to be a cop again. I'm going to be going back into detective work, and I'm going to be getting a big paycheck out of it for what they had already been subjected to. Like, that's where my thought process is going. So I'm truly thinking these guys made a mistake.
Okay, so what happens now? You're in handcuffs. They go through your house. They start to execute the warrant. Walk us through that.
So then I start to realize that this is the FBI. And granted, well, you said on the phone they said this is the FBI. So yes, but I was also still waking up. Right. It took a long time to explain something that happened probably 30 to 45 seconds. And so as I'm sitting there and I'm looking, I'm like, because most of our tactical teams are the same. We all have olive drab. So I'm like, this ain't the Riverside County Sheriff's. You're seeing the big bright, yellow letters, FBI SWAT, FBI SWAT. And so as I'm asking for the warrant, and one of the guys tells me, when the agents get here, they'll tell you about it. That's when I start wondering, okay, this isn't a mistake. What the hell's going on? And so now I'm trying to figure it out, and I can't, because like I said, I can't make the J6 connection yet. And so finally, and by this time the sun is up. Oh, well, one more fact. During this time, they order my family, and this is the shit that, because I am going to seek them accountability for what happened. This was a terrifying experience for me, who's been in combat, who's been in law enforcement. And even then, it was still, when you're walking out, there's guns pointed at you, and it's not a training evolution. That's intense. It's, they're not aiming at your chest. Like I know where those guys, they're behind their rifles, and I know what they're looking at. They're looking right here. And so that's a very, uncomfortable situation to be in. The only thing worse than that is that I'm sitting on the curb, and now I got to watch my future wife, my son, and my daughter all be subjected to that. And to watch their faces wondering, please don't shoot me. Please don't shoot me. Please don't shoot me. They're civilians. They've never had anything involvement with what's going on. And so if it was terrifying for me, I can imagine what it was for them. And if that didn't make things worse, I'm watching my family on the other side of the road in their pajamas, cold in the morning, and I'm seeing my fiance plead with them, can I please go in and get our baby? Can I go in and get our baby? And the answer is no, 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 no. I'm telling the guy that's babysitting me, I go, "Hey, it's freezing cold, man. It's a little house. Can you just clear the living room? It's not like we got a lot of things in there. You know, it's a couch and an entertainment center and a TV and it's tile floor. Can you clear the living room and take my family inside? Because like I said, I know how these situations unfold. And we'll get on it. We'll get on it. We'll get on it. And to make matters worse, they come and bring me a foil blanket and wrap me in the foil blanket in front of my family who's freezing their asses off. So it made it look like, because they can't hear the conversations I'm having, it made it look like to my family that I'm asking for them to keep me warm while they're freezing their asses off.
Oh, it's so nefarious, man.
It is. You want to talk about pissing them off and probably trying to make them mad at me like that. That's the beginning of that psychological operation.
Yes. It's all psychological operation. I just want to, add to what you were saying about your family and the trauma. I'm like you, Alpha. I don't have any arrest record. I've never been in handcuffs. I've never been in trouble with the law. The worst thing I ever did is I got a drag racing ticket when I was 18. And that ended up getting thrown out because I wasn't actually drag racing. I was going pretty fast, but it wasn't drag racing. That's the worst thing I've ever done in terms of, engagement with law enforcement. Didn't get put in handcuffs for that. And all I had was 2 plainclothes FBI agents show up at my shop in jeans and a t-shirt and a polo shirt, both Marines, which is another psychological operation. They send Marines knowing that I'm a Marine, hoping that I'll, confide in them or at least lower my guard down a little bit. And when all that was done, I was traumatized by that. Your average human being, American citizen, is going to go through their entire life without ever having interaction with a federal law enforcement in that capacity. You might know them, you might see them, whatever, but to have them come up to your place of business unprovoked, without any knowledge that they're going to be showing up, without any contact, to me was traumatizing. I can't imagine what I would do. And like you said, it was divine intervention that you did not grab your pistol instead of your phone, because I'm in the same boat as you, Alpha. I still have that tactical mindset, and I have a firearm within reach of my bedside. And if that had happened to me, the first thing I would have done was go to I live in a 2-story house, gone in my guest bedroom window and looked out that window to see what was going on in front of my house. And that probably would have been a dangerous thing if that had happened to me. So grace of God, because I know your mindset from a Marine standpoint, not from a law enforcement standpoint. And that would just compound my Marine brain in how to respond to a situation like that. So it was absolutely by the grace of God that you showed that restraint.
It is, because the following moves, following me turning off the alarm, was going to be me turning off my front light, because it's not dawning on me that it's bright because of a spotlight. I'm thinking it's my porch light. The following moves is I'm turning off that porch light. I'm putting all my family into one room. Yes. And I'm going to go out my back slider and I'm going to flank whoever's trying to get into my house. Like, that's the way this was going to unfold. Because like I said, you want the advantage. And the second I would have stepped into out the back slider with a gun in my hand or out the front door, I'm done. The story, this is the headline that day. FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force goes to execute search warrant on fired corrupt cop because of domestic extremism investigation. Cop steps out with a gun against DJTTF. They opened fire and killed him.
Armed corrupt cop swayed by MAGA extremism, and January 6th shot dead by FBI. And then everything gets buried. We never get any of the story because we didn't know you. This is something with the Charlie Kirk assassination, and the Candace Owens flack and everything. When this first had happened and Candace Owens started digging into this, me and Ash were on a show together, and she said the same thing. She said, I would move heaven on earth if this had happened to Brian, or if this had happened to John or Alpha or anybody that's in Badlands with us, our good friends. You didn't have those connections back then. You were a small account. And that's another thing that's really important that we did not hit on. And I apologize. I'm doing an injustice by not mentioning this. How many followers did you have? How many followers do you have right now on X?
On X, it's about 116,000.
Okay.
Right now.
So you've got a big following on X. How many followers did you have when you posted that message?
This is the crazy part. All my shit talking was on Instagram because that was my huge platform. And when I say huge, I mean it was probably like 2,000. During the Great Purge, that my Instagram got taken down. So in early 2020, I lost my Instagram. So I was like, you know what? I have this old Twitter account. I'll just go in there and talk my shit there. Because I'm frustrated like everybody else. So I went over there to my massive 623 followers. No podcasts.
Did you weren't even doing podcasts then? Did you look at the engagement by chance at the time and see how many people had actually seen that post and engaged in it? Is it on there?
That's a great question, and I believe it is on there. So let me.
You're talking. You might have reached 100 people, 100 people, maybe.
You're being very kind.
I am.
You're being very kind.
Which is also interesting because it gives you a very small number of people that could have instigated this investigation, because you only have probably double digits of people that actually saw this post.
And I'm glad you brought this up, because I grabbed these things the day of them raiding me to document all this stuff. And I have 2 comments, 3 reposts, and 7 likes. So I was moving the needle. I was moving the needle on what was going on in the conversations of our country.
Hugely influential. Okay, carry on. I'm sorry.
You can't survive that kind of momentum. That's too dangerous. Here, well, before I get into, and let me take this off the screen real quick, Brian, and I'm going to get the pre-incident indicators lined up as we start to approach that part of the story, because that's really going to flip people out. So finally, sun's up. By this time, the search team's in my house with my newborn. Mama Bear still has not been able to go in there and take care of the newborn. And we're talking somewhere between at least the minimum to 90 minutes to 2 hours have passed.
Oh my God. Your baby has been in the house 2 hours without any.
With strangers, because I don't know these people. 2
months old.
2 months old.
Cutest little 2-year-old terrorist now, or that wasn't the 2-year-old terrorist. This was your other one.
No, she's the angel. The new one is she's the terrorist, man. She's
it turns off your alarm so you're late to Badlands Daily.
Yes, she's something else, man. Charlotte, bless her little heart. But this was with Alexandria, my little Allie. It was a sweet they're both sweet princesses. One's just the bully of all of us. And so finally, they start taking my family inside, and they take me to my backyard. So they walk me through the side of my house. I'm back there, and there's 4 operators, still in their full tactical gear, that are sitting there babysitting me. I'm still handcuffed. I'm sitting down on one of my patio chairs. And finally, the 2 agents come, and so they see them. I get up, and they're like, "Oh, hey, take the handcuffs off." Take the handcuffs off. So as they're unhandcuffing me, the actual FBI agent, this is Special Agent Enrique Armenta, and his story is going to get a little interesting later on. But it's Special Agent Enrique Armenta and Joint Terrorism Task Force Officer John Candias, who retired during all this stuff a little earlier than we would anticipate, but nonetheless retired from Rialto PD. He's opening up his black leather book, and in there, I see screenshots, printouts of my Twitter account. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, the fuck? And now they can't see it, but I've got rage going through me. I'm like, if this is what you fucking subjected my family to and me is over social media, I'll get everybody fucking fired. Like that's how pissed I am. I'm getting ready there for them to tell me, hey, you're a homicide suspect. We know you're involved in this murder. And I'm going to tell them, you dumbasses, wrong Alfredo. Like, that's where I'm getting ready to have the exchange. And then I see my social media. And I'm thinking, how the F did you get a search warrant to get a SWAT team on a night service with the deployment of a flashbang off fucking Twitter? Like, that's what I'm thinking. And so he sees me seeing it, and he's like, we're sitting here to, we want to talk to you about your social media being potentially violent. And this is a recorded conversation. And I respond with, nothing in my social media is violent, and I want my attorney. That's how this starts off, and it's recorded. At that point, legally, our conversation is done. I know this, and they know this, because you're going to have a Miranda issue if you ask me anything after that point. You know, it's just so people understand, you know, Miranda, two things need to exist: integration and custody. And just because you take handcuffs off somebody doesn't remove custody. You have to go in the mindset of the person that's being interrogated. And this is all supported by case law. Like I said, this is what my expertise is in. And a lot of cops will remove handcuffs, you know, because they think, well, this will put me outside of custody. A special agent and a detective do not think that way, ever. That's a 5-year and under rookie move. That is not, that you will never get detectives to make that mistake, or an FBI agent, because the next thing that a defense attorney is going to ask, or a judge is going to ask, well, how many officers were present? And at this point, you have 2 special agents and 4 operators, 6 cops. So they're going to say, well, would a reasonable person think that they have the right to leave? And the answer to that question is probably not. But in addition to that, as I sit down and they're starting to ask me questions, I ask the next question. Can I go check on my family and make sure they're okay? And their response is, no, we got to talk to you first.
Then that's,
so now, even though I'm not handcuffed, I'm not free to move about my house. I can't even check on my family. So they understand that this entire conversation we're going to have right now is not going to be admissible. Right. It's illegal. You know, forget the civil side of it. It's illegal. And that's already setting the precedence for what the next 4 years is going to be like.
Yep.
And so I'll highlight the specifics of this conversation. So they questioned me over, this is the primary tweet. They questioned me over 2 other tweets. One that had 1/19 for January 19th with the little @ symbol at 4:30. And they're like, you know, well, what does this mean? And I go, you know, because remember, this is before January 19th. This is January 15th. This inauguration hasn't happened yet. I said, well, a lot of us believe that Trump at the last second is going to come and provide all this election fraud information. We really believe, at the time, I really believed that we were going to get all this information, that there was no way that President Biden was going to be able to become president through a stolen election without us not knowing what's going on. So this is, you know, so I'm explaining that to them. They're like, well, what's this one mean? You know, this skull, this Punisher skull that has the 3 lines in it, the Roman numeral 3, and these stars around it. What's that mean? I'm like, that's a Chris Kyle Punisher skull. And who's that? I'm just like, you guys know exactly what that skull is. We have them all over our locker room. We have them, you know, I have tactical gear too. We have those patches on us. It's everybody knows it's just one of those, you know, warrior ethos things that we have. And in the interview, the Candias, he's like, you know, that's not what it is. And I'm thinking, where are you going with this, bro? Because that's exactly what it is. And he hits me with this. You're part of the 3% group.
Whoa.
And I'm like, who the fuck is the 3% militia? He's like, you know who they are. And I'm just like, never heard of them, man. And he's just like, you know who these militias are. And I said, first of all, if you're throwing out militia, then I've heard of 2. I go, I've heard of the Proud Boys and I've heard of the Oath Keepers. I go, but never in my life have I heard of the 3%ers. And he's like, well, who do you think they are? Well, I go, if you're asking me to make an educated decision or a speculation here, this is all recorded. I said, I know who the 1%ers are, because remember, I'm a gang detective.
I was about to say that.
And so that's who I'm going to make, you know, that's how I'm going to rationalize this speculation. And 1%ers, for those that don't know, is, you know, if you've ever heard of the term OMGs, or outlaw motorcycle gangs, you know, in motorcycle gangs, there's a little diamond patch with a little 1 in it with a percentage size, 1%. And that comes from I won't get into the specifics, but there was a rally, and a particular, you know, city mayor came out and said, you know, they're 1% of the trouble. And at that point, the OMGs adopted that 1%er title to them. And so I said, so if we know 1%ers are bad, I'm assuming 3%ers are the opposite end of that. the good guys. And so he turns around and says, no, 3%ers is because it took 3% of the population to do a revolution against the government, all this stuff. And so I told him, I go, I never heard that, man. But if that's what you're saying, I go, I'll look it up. But he goes, and so he's telling me that I'm part of a 3%er group because I have this photo on there. And I'll explain the relevance of that in a little bit. Because remember, I specifically in California, I'm an expert in search warrants and gangs.
So let me just interrupt you real quick there, because you are an expert in gangs. Have you, and you'd never heard of 3%ers? Could it possibly be because militias, organizations along those lines are constitutionally protected? Like they're permissible. You are allowed to have militias in this country. It is part of our foundation. I mean, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. It's in the Second Amendment. And now they've gone off, and I hate this. I really hate this. They've gone off and said, well, the militia is the National Guard. No. The militia is not the National Guard. The militia is what they used to supplement the Army regulars in the American Revolution, and they were community-based groups that got together to defend themselves if something ever happened, if they had to repel an invasion, if God forbid Red Dawn ever happens and Russians start dropping out of aircraft into our home, our backyards. You can better believe I've got a plan on that. If we ever have a shit hits the fan moment, my Marines, we have a plan. These are things that are that it's perfectly within the bounds of our Constitution. And so the 3%ers going after them, they're not an acknowledged gang. Otherwise, you would have had some subject matter expertise on them. You would have known, at least they would have been on your radar. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
They were showing their hand a little bit, I think, in asking you that specific question, I assume. And just a little speculation comment. It sounds like since you were like patient zero of this kind of behavior and treatment, it's like they were making or forming the blueprint of how to deal with J6ers in that very moment.
It does, especially when we get into the tail end of the conversation with them. I at the time didn't see it, but as the course of these stories started to surf out, I was like, hey, they did that to me. They did that to me. They did that to me. They did that. And you start to realize the template that was unfolding here. But and to your point, Ken, you're absolutely right. Even if I was a 3%er, there's nothing wrong with that. It just in my situation, never even heard of them. So then we get past that. So then they asked me later on in the interview, they asked me 2 questions that I've never asked anybody in my 14 years. Not only have I never asked anybody, I've never heard any of my partners ask anybody. I've never read a police report where these questions, I've never seen these 2 questions asked in law enforcement in my 14 years, ever. Question number 1, what party are you registered with?
Wow.
And remember, folks, this is recorded. You don't have to take my word for it. And I answered Republican. The second question, who'd you vote for president? President Trump. So you can imagine my anger and frustration over the next few weeks, months, and years when I kept hearing mainstream media and Chris Wray and everybody else saying, this is not political. The fuck you mean it's not political? You literally asked me what party I'm registered with and who I voted for president. And then after I responded, I voted for President Trump. He asked me, why? Why'd you vote for him? And that's my same reaction you guys have, I have. And I'm like, because he's done this for our military, he's done this, he's done this, he's done this. And I'm like, and Candias, the Rialto PD guy, starts making some, unethical, or maybe unethical is I would say unethical. He starts to make his opinion on Trump.
Operation Gaslight, bro. What the hell is this?
And it's just like, that has no place in the interview. There's zero place for that in the interview. Now, one of the most important statements that Candias makes, and this is why I say, I wish I could go and look up everybody's and give me 1 second. I just heard the doorbell ring. You guys buy me a second real quick.
Yeah, I'll get Eli's take so far on this.
I'm just in shell shock right now, man. This is fascinating because literally he is quite a patient zero. It's like they didn't have a template just yet. So it's like he was kind of a guinea pig, and it's just kind of heartbreaking given that he is as decorated as he was, and treated this way. And I know we're not even at the end result here.
You're on day one still. There's 4 years of this. He's gone through what when I tell you that his case alone could probably lead to massive reform in how, not just because you'll see we're not there yet. The FBI is kind of going to step back from this in a second. You'll see in the story. And do you know what fruit of the poison tree means?
No.
So fruit of the poison tree is a legal term that basically, if a process was done illegally, anything that results from that is also illegal, even if you actually find a crime. So if the cops show up at my house and they have no justification for going into my house and they find something in my house and they charge me with that, it's fruit of the poison tree. You violated my Fourth Amendment rights by coming into my house without a warrant, whatever the case might be. And now there's other applications. I'm just trying to say something relevant to here. But yeah, that's kind of what we're going to see. And fruit of the poison tree, there's an implication that you actually committed a crime, and this is going to shock you. All right, he's back now. So Eli's shocked, and I told him we haven't even gotten to the shocking parts yet. So go ahead. You good?
It gets far worse. It doesn't get better till the end, unfortunately.
Dude, your life is a bit like a crazy M. Night Shyamalan reality show. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't wish what I experienced on anybody. But I also wouldn't undo what happened to me because I know the things that have resulted from it that turned positive as well. That's kind of my opinion on that.
Okay, so Candy Ass gets involved.
So Candy Ass asks this question that probably would have.
I prefer Candy Ass.
I remember the first time somebody posted that, I was like, we can roll with that.
That's what I kept hearing throughout this conversation, just saying.
He asked a question that most people wouldn't have caught it. But since we were both in the same field, I absolutely caught it. He makes a statement, not a question. He says, "You just know how to post without getting in trouble."
Whoa.
Now, the reason that is so important is because when we go to a judge and I get the search warrant and I put it and I hand it over to the judge, we go into the chambers with the judge. And the judge is going over this. And as a matter of fact, he's been reviewing it for a while. And before he even calls us into the chamber. And so then we go in there and the judge is going to go through. And if there's things that need to be clarified, he's going to clarify those things with us. If there's things that he's like, okay, well, you should have included that. We're going to make notes. We'll do a revision of that, include this additional information. And the judge is always going to add information. He's never going to take out information. That's important for people to understand. But you're going to go in there, and then at the end of this conversation with the judge, that could be a few minutes, it could be an hour, just depending on the size of this warrant. The judge is going to say, okay, you and whoever's in there with you that's signing the affidavit, raise your right hand. You're going to raise your right hand, and we swear an oath under penalty of perjury that everything in the search warrant is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge. What this means for those that aren't tracking is that means that all the information that I have that's pertinent to a search warrant is included. That includes exculpatory information. That means even information that's not beneficial to, my seeking this search warrant has to be included. So if a suspect tells me he has an alibi or something like this, we have to include that because a judge needs to know the totality of what's going on. Because what is a search warrant? It's a judge giving an aspect of the government a legal right to violate your Fourth Amendment. It's our constitutional right. And so that's why these things are there. So when Candace made this statement, this is what it translates into. I know your posts didn't violate Penal Code 422. That's the translation. So that means when he told the judge that he's there to seek a criminal search warrant for a criminal investigation into the probable cause of terrorist threats, he knew that the threshold wasn't met.
I thought he was trying to force intent or something, that it was an admission. He was admitting that it was not a violation. I'm understanding. Yeah.
It's what he's doing, but that the more consequential thing is what happened preceding the search warrant. The other part of the conversation that was very important is when they tell me that the whole scope of this is because of my Twitter being potentially violent. They go and add on, because you want people to go and disrupt our nation's capital. Like you're provoking this type of response. And so then I tell them, I go, just 2 days ago, I posted. There was a post going around. It was a red banner, and as a matter of fact, I think I have that one to share with you guys. There was a post going around that it said, here it is under tweets ignored. Let me open this, and I'll share this one. This post was going around, and me and a few others, much larger profiles than me, reposted this. And if you want to bring that up, Ken.
Yep.
And here I'll zoom in to make it a little easier for people to see. Here, So this post, so 4 days ago, so that was 4 days prior to the 15th. So Marine Corps math, I think that would be the 11th. So on the 11th, I put this post out there. And let me scroll down right here. There's me. And I put, this is a hashtag BLM and a hashtag Antifa trap. Do not attend, in all caps. Share this. And this post, as you can see, it's telling people to go, when you see when that post particular was expanded, it's telling people to go to the national capital or their state capitals and to go armed. And so I tell them, I go, how did you get a judge to sign a search warrant that I'm telling people to do this when I just literally told people a few days ago not to? Now, the smart thing for them to would have said is just continue lying and be like, what are you talking about? Right? That would at least give them plausible deniability. But they didn't. They acknowledged it. They said, yeah, we saw that, but you told people not to go because it's Antifa and BLM. And so then my response to them was, I don't care if I told people not to go because it's too fucking cold. I'm telling people not to go. And so I immediately knew. I knew in that second, that very second it was revealed to me, I go, I am dealing with dirty cops. And the reason I knew that was because I knew that there was no way that post was presented in the search warrant to the judge, because any judge would immediately said, hey, you guys are saying that he's doing this, but he's saying this. And you would have to create the argument to that, which you wouldn't be able to do. A judge is going to deny that search warrant. So I knew, because I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to the judicial system at the time, I knew that there's no way a judge is going to approve this because he's going to deny it. So I know that that's being left out. So I already know they've already committed a moral crime and they've already created illegal crimes. And then a little bit later, the conversation surrounding you know how to post without breaking the law enters. And now I start to see these dominoes fall and realize what I'm dealing with.
All right, so we'll keep this moving, but I do just want to add one thing to what you're talking about here. Is you got to also remember the mindset. Well, we'll call it the mindset of social media at this particular time. This is January 2021. There's mass censorship. I'd already been removed from Twitter. I'd already been removed from many of these platforms. I think I still had YouTube in January. That wasn't until June, about 8 months later, that I was kicked off of YouTube. But even if it didn't rise to that level, the posts still existed. They weren't, they weren't censored. And we make the argument all the time that the only censorship that they should be able to implement on social media is speech that violates the Constitution, that violates the law. And, we have posts being taken down because we're talking about Dominion, or we're talking about, election fraud or COVID masks and the mandates for the jabs, or they weren't there yet either. But we're talking about all this bullshit, getting all of those taken down. But then your post is allowed to stay up there, and it results in criminal prosecution against you, or leads to criminal prosecution against you. You're not the only case, by the way, in which this has happened. Douglas Mackey is a very famous one as well, where he had a post in 2016 where he funny, a joke, said, hey, make sure you text your vote to vote for Hillary, text your vote to this number. And if you actually did go and text that number, it clearly tells you that it's a joke, whatever. And he was arrested for that. This was in 2016. They arrested him in 2021 for that, 5 years, right before the statute of limitations would have run out on whatever crime they accused, thought crime, 1984 Orwellian bullshit. And so this is a pattern. It's not just you being persecuted over social media. So, all right.
Well, you highlighted an important point. It didn't even violate terms of service.
Right. It didn't violate Twitter's terms of service.
And the other thing that I would people, if you joined late and you didn't hear me read the post, is I don't say the government.
Right.
I don't say the police.
In fact, you say the third thing on your list is God, family, country.
Yeah, but what the part where I said, and with me as we take on the evil that is now still in our nation. I don't reference anybody specifically. I just say evil. We're going to take on the evil. So if anything, it's
how dare you leave it up to interpretation?
That's what I'm saying. It's the FBI and the government that's saying, well, we're self-identifying as evil. Like, we know you're referencing us when you use the word evil.
So in the interest of moving this, because
we'll fly through the next.
I know we could turn this into 4 hours, but talk about the disparity, the discrepancy, or whatever you want to call it, the disparity in how they searched your home, because I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. So when we search homes, we start from the front of the property, move our way back. Narcotics are a little bit different because you want to get there before stuff is destroyed. But outside of narcotics, you start from the front of the property line, you move your way back. And so in my case, it would be the garage and then my son's bedroom. And and CanCon's seen, my vehicle, I'm OCD clean. They destroyed the inside of my truck. It looked like a tweaker homeless truck is what the inside of my truck looked like. My garage destroyed. It looked like a hurricane. My son's room destroyed on his 13th birthday. His 13th birthday and his room is destroyed. The next room after that is the bathroom. It's our hallway and it's the living room, which, like I said, not very much in the living room. And then it's my daughter's room. Well, right when you get to her door, on the wall right there is all my accolades from law enforcement, which had only been put up less than a month before that, because I had everything in a box because, I was still upset given, everything that I was fighting in. And that's when the missus was like, no, listen, you won. You deserve these things. I'm putting them up. And so one of the days I was gone at work, she puts them up because at this time I'm doing contract work as an explosive canine handler. And I'm also working as one of the gang officers for the Palm Springs Unified School District. Those are the two jobs that I'm doing while I'm, fighting this battle. And when they get to that, and I only know this because, my stepdaughter, shared this story with us. She's being babysitted by one of the agents in there. And she says they all congregated at the wall and that she goes, a guy asked the bald guy. And my recollection is that bald guy he looked like the team leader to me, that a bald guy asked him, hey, are we arresting this guy? And that the bald guy, who I think is the team leader, responded, no, I think this is one of the good guys. Her room and beyond, the rest of the house, which includes my bedroom, which is where all my guns are kept, treated immaculately. Stuff was folded, and if it wasn't put in the drawer, it was still folded and put in front of the drawer. It looked like two different search teams hit the house, is what it looked like. And the reason being is because when they got to that wall, they saw Marine Corps combat meritorious promotion. They saw a commendation from the Marine Corps. They saw the award for the Medal of Valor. They saw an award from their own agency signed by James Comey. They saw Detective of the Year, Officer of the Year. Like I was very blessed to have a very good career. And so I think that was, because remember, this is new for me and it's new for them. And so when those two special agents, or the special agent and the detective, brief those guys in the morning, because I've been on both ends. I've been the one briefing a SWAT team, then I've been on the other side of the guy that's going to go through the door that's been briefed. You rely on those guys doing the briefing to let you know what the fuck you're walking into. And I truly do believe that these guys, the actual operators, really thought that they're coming to the house of a disgruntled, crazy combat veteran, disgraced police officer that was going to get in a shootout with them. I truly believe that they actually thought that. Remember, January 15th, my opinion has changed since then. But at the time, I think so. And the reason is because of this part of that Brian brought up is you could tell they felt bad. You could tell they immediately felt bad about the situation. And then on top of that, as this part of the story concludes, they finally bring me in my house now. and I'm with my family. And I asked the special agent Armenta, I said, so what do you guys want from me? Do you want me to delete my social media? Like, how do I make sure that this doesn't happen to my family anymore? And this is what Armenta tells me. He goes, hey, man, look, you're a good guy, but this is your chance to take the off ramp and stop saying the shit that you're saying about the government.
What the fuck?
Now, you got to remember what I just saw my family go through. And I spent that day and that night, you know, thinking like, man, should I just back off? You know, should I give them what they want? Because, you know, they left, but I'm still sitting there. You know, my ex had to come pick up my son so he could at least have somewhat of a birthday. I don't even get to spend the rest of the day with my son on his birthday. So that hurts because this is the year your son becomes a man, you know, a teenager. You know, that's taken from me. You know, the missus is crying, you know, because, you know, she's, you know, what happened to the baby during this time, you know, it just, I'm thinking like, man, I'm to the point where I'm almost ready to concede just to make sure my family never goes through this again. That would be a short-lived emotion, but that's literally the brink that it brought me to. Like that's how this affected, you know, me and my family. And that's still not going into all the details of what transpired during that time. So they would give me a property receipt. They would take all my guns. During this time, well, this part's important to explain the next part. Remember, I said I was a canine handler for an explosive canine for a contract company. And so I tell them, hey, you're not taking my odors, right? And they're like, yeah, you don't have a right to have those. And I'm like, yes, I do. I have my ATF certification and transport certificate for these things because you got to have those things because that's the only way you can transport these things. And they're like, no, you don't. Yes, I do. Go to my truck, because I haven't seen my truck yet. I haven't seen what they've done to my home. I could go to my truck, go to the glove box. Under the driver's manual, there's a plastic sheet in there, and all those certificates are in there, including a copy of my ID. They come back after a few minutes. No, it's not. Where else could it be? I'm like, no, that's where it's at. You know, I can tell you how much change is in my truck. You know,
he's OCD like that. I can vouch for that.
It's retarded stupid, right? I'll tell you how many nickels, how many pins. Like I can tell you.
He's not
right?
joking.
You know, there is a crumpled receipt that's still in my second cup holder from me going to Burger Box yesterday. It is what it is. It's weird. But I tell them, where else? I go, you can look with the odors themselves, but I know they're not there. So ultimately, they come back and they're like, no, nothing in the ATF database says you have permission to have these and all this, and we're taking them. So right then and there, I'm thinking, what the fuck is going on? Like, I have this. Like, I know I have it. Now, this is what saved me is, you know, I grew up, I'm a Gen Xer, and I had a mom that was like, you make copies of everything, right? And you hold on to that stuff for 20 years. And so you're not supposed to make copies of these ATF certificates and, you know, permission slips, I guess is what you can call them. But I did. I actually had a copy on my cloud. So I called up my attorneys that were representing me with my agency. I'm like, hey, this shit just went down. They're like, what? Like they're tripping out. And I said, hey, and so of course my attorney says, what angle do you think they're taking? I said, I think they're going to try to say that I don't have permission to be in possession of these explosives, the odors. And she goes, well, you do, right? And I'm like, of course I do. I have a copy I can send to you. She's like, send it to me and send it to a few other people that you don't tell me. So we know that this exists in several places. And so I do. And then I think it was the following day, or it might have even been that night, either that night or the following day, he provided them with this. Hey, you guys said this didn't exist. Because remember, they even said, we checked with ATF and you don't have this. And she said, well, somebody's lying because, boom, here you go. It is my speculation that this is the route that they were actually going to arrest me for. Like, this is what the charges were going to be for. And when she rug pulled that, then because remember, I truly believe these guys are dirty cops. I believe they got into a conversation of what the fuck do we do now?
Right.
Because this is
that would have been federal.
Yes. That would have been a federal charge. And
Okay.
and now they're like, this shit's gonna blow up in our face now.
Right.
And so the next thing that happened was January 20th, Inauguration Day, and I'll just fly through this part. I get arrested for California Penal Code 30605, which is possession of an unregistered assault rifle.
Okay, hold on. Before we go there, so the cops ended up leaving the FBI. The FBI ended up leaving your house. No arrests. You blew up what they hoped to get you for the odors. for, you know, that you were training, because you just by the grace of God backed it up with a copy. And so there was nothing there. So they leave. Do you think you're in the clear at this point, or do you know that there's going to be more?
Once I got that copy to my attorney, then that's when I was like, all right, you know, it exists. Like an attorney and some friends have this. So now I'm in the clear, because I'm thinking, you know, even though they said, well, no, you're good. I'm thinking, if you're saying I don't have permission to have these odors, there ain't no way I'm good. Like, you don't get to overlook that shit, you know? So then that's why, but once I got that copy of the ATF certificate to her, that's when I'm like, all right, I'm good now, because, you know, if you know, because remember, they got my phone. So it wasn't like I just could immediately grab my phone, go to this. There were certain things that I had to do to get access to my iCloud, because I'm up against the clock. Because I'm thinking, they have my phone, they're going to go in, they're going to start deleting all the shit that they know is going to be against them. So you know, I was able through people who helped to get access to my iCloud pretty fast and get that document over to her.
Okay. All right. So go fast forward now, January 20th, 5 days later.
Yeah. So 5 days later, I find out that I'm being arrested for possession of unregistered assault rifle. Now, I only have 2 rifles. I have my hunting rifle and I have my tactical rifle. Now, when and quote unquote assault rifle, right, using their language, because I'm in California, I'm like, hell, you mean unregistered and don't have permission? So just to make people understand this is my patrol rifle. This is the rifle I've used as a cop for about 10 years. And every year we have to qualify a minimum of 3 times. So that means there's 10 years worth at least of a minimum of 3 times me writing that serial number down every single time. On top of that, it's been a minute since I brought this out. On top
I
of
am
that,
dumbfounded. Just keep going.
We're not even there yet.
I always tell people, don't take my word for it, because I went on, you know, CanCon's show and many other shows, and I showed everybody this.
Cathedral City Police Department issue. Yep. Okay.
And it's dated October 4th, 2011. 2011. So if Marine Corps math, that's what, 10 years? This is who is issued to: State of California, Department of Justice, Division of Law Enforcement, Firearms Licensing and Permits Unit, Bureau of Firearms, with their address, with my name, the serial number of the firearm. So I'm like, what? What are you guys talking about? In addition to that, you know, it belonged to a cop before it belonged to me. It went from one cop to another cop. So it's like there's double documentation of this. So of course, you know, I made sure my attorney had a copy of that as well. And now it's like, how corrupt are these guys?
So just to be clear, you're now being arrested at the state level, right, by California for an unregistered firearm that you've taken to the range and documented every time you go to the range to qualify with this firearm. It's documented down to the serial number. They have these records. The law enforcement has these records. I'm sure California Department of Law Enforcement probably has a database with all of these records. You have the original licensing there, probably a bill of sale. Knowing you, there's a bill of sale as well on the rifle, and you have all this, and you can show them all of this, and they're still arresting you for an unregistered firearm.
Yeah, well, I had all this, but you got to remember. So just to play it out. So I get a call from one of my partners that's working at the school district, who was prior law enforcement himself too. He retired from that. And he's just like, hey man, I just got pulled over by Palm Springs PD, and they're asking where you're at. He goes, and I also noticed 2 unmarked cars over there by the district office, because, you know, we don't park at it's a headquarters for the school district. And he goes, and by this time my partners all knew what happened 5 days earlier. And he goes, the shit don't look good for you, bro. And I obviously agreed with them. You don't have 2 unmarks down there, and you don't pull over someone unless you plan on making an arrest. So at that point, I know they're going to make an arrest. And so again, I'm playing it back to, well, this has to be around the social media, because it can't be the odors. So I call up my boss at the time and I say, hey, look, man, this is what's going down. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna change into civvies because I'm not gonna have me and the school uniform getting arrested, to disgrace the school or anything like that. Plus, I need to go home. I need to make sure Mama Bear has my bank cards and the phone tree of numbers and all that stuff. He's like, no, he was a friend. He's like, I'll go with you. I go, that's cool. So we go to my house. I change over. The missus and the kids are crying, and I just said, listen, just call the attorney. Here's my bank card. So if you guys need money and formula and all that stuff, and we'll figure this out. Because I know it's going to be an arrest, but I don't know how long this is going to last. Like I don't know how this is going to play out. So at that point, my partner calls again. He goes, hey man, they just stopped me again. they ask, where you're at. I go, let them know that I know they're there and that I'm coming. I'm coming in the unit because it was a marked unit from the school district. I'm coming in the unit. This is the number. And I'll be there. And my boss he's with me. So, they don't have to have any worries if they think I'm fleeing or something like that. And so we head on over there. And when I get there, there's a couple of Palm Springs Police Department cars. And then there's the unmarked units that my partner was talking about. And I know these guys from Palm Springs PD. Yeah, this is the neighboring agency. I've worked with these guys. So the sergeant that's coming, I know who he is. And he's like, hey, Luna, man, I'm sorry. You know what this is about, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's my social media, man. And he goes, no, man, they gave us a warrant for your arrest for unregistered assault rifle. I'm like, no, man, it's about my social media. They were just at my house a few days ago. Like, this is what it's about. And he goes, no, well, Armenta sees me and the sergeant talking. And I think that made them uncomfortable because they beeline to us really quick. And he's like, hey, you're under arrest for this. And he tells me. And so then I look at him and I'm like, I go through, what's the charge? He confirms it. And I go, what's the bail? And this is where I knew, like, man, shit's going downhill fast.
Wait. Armenta was the one that was telling you that? Isn't he federal? What's his involvement in that?
They were the ones handling the case. So all they did was they just utilize, and even though Candice is the one signing the paper, Armenta is still the case agent. Armenta, Candice, the Rialto guy, he's the reason he's there. And this is kind of things that I've learned in, this adventure is, FBI doesn't have jurisdiction. And so in order to do this, that's why they create these joint task force, because you're bringing on guys that do have jurisdiction. You now have a California cop that's there. So the California cops are the ones that sign all these things, but it's being funded by the wallet of the government and executed by the agent of the FBI. And so anyways, he comes over and he tells me $250,000. So then I asked, what are the other charges? And he goes, it's just that charge. So I knew because of my experience, because I expected him to say somewhere between 20 and 35,000 because it fluctuates. But a single weapons charge, because I've arrested people for that, is between that 20 and 30, $35,000. So when he said $250,000, I'm thinking they're stacking all kinds of charges on me. So when he says no other charge, I knew right then and there that they did what's known as a bail enhancement. Now, I've done this less than a handful of times, maybe in my career. This is what you save for the worst of the worst. When you ask for a bail enhancement, essentially what you're doing is you're pleading with the judge that if this dude makes bail, somebody's going to die. Like this dude could not get bail or someone's going to die. Like that's what you're saving. And it's usually like a really bad domestic violence where like, we found the woman, she's unconscious. Like the dude tried to kill her. Right. That's usually where you see that. Or, in the gang world, you end up finding a guy that was working a contract on someone else and you don't want him to execute that contract. Like that's the scope of what this is used for. And so I'm thinking, what the fuck did you tell a judge on social media to get a bail enhancement on me? So then they asked me, well, what jail do you want to go to? Because we had the Indio jail and the Banning Larry D. Smith Correctional Facility. And I'm like, and by this time, like, I'm deflated.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
And I'm like, does it matter? I have homicide suspects at both jails. It doesn't matter which one you send me to.
You're a marked man. You're a marked man.
I'm a target at either one. And so they end up sending me to Banning. So Palm Springs does the transport. This is something that was weird, but turned out to be good. As we're driving, the custody officer, he has me, I'm in the back of the paddy wagon, right? And he pulls over into this commercial area that's kind of dark, has like the little, looks like an old like storage place. And so I'm there. There's like a little window that I can see what's going on. And I'm like, what the like we've only been driving for 5 minutes. What the fuck's going on now? And so this single young custody guy comes out and he opens the door and he goes, hey, hey man, go ahead and step out. I'm gonna put the cuffs in front of you and move you to the front. I'm like, I ain't stepping out. like I know how this plays out. I step out, he was trying to escape. He attacked the custody officer, and the partner that maybe I don't see that's around the corner is gonna put one in my dome. So I'm like, I ain't stepping out, man. I go, you guys ain't gonna say that I try to escape or anything. And he goes, no, man. He goes, I talked to Sergeant, so and so, and he says that you're a good guy and that this shit shouldn't be happening to you. And he told me that when I got far away enough to double cuff you in the front and bring you to the front because this is bullshit. And so very cautiously, I step out, and he does. He puts my hands in front of me. He double cuffs me, and he brings me to the front. And for anybody who says, yeah, you can make up that story. No, I'm not stupid either. I met these guys where I know we got cameras that record. So there's a recording of where I was handcuffed and where I was put in the vehicle. Now, I don't know if there's recordings to where he stopped, but there's recordings at the jail facility where they brought me. And what you will notice is where I get out is not where I got put in, and that I'm handcuffed in the front. So it's very easy to verify my story of this happening. So no one can say that it's a lie because you can prove it. And the reason that was important is because, like I said, I was pretty damn deflated. And this at least gave me a little ounce of hope that not everybody was buying this bullshit. And that my name and work ethic preceded me enough to where guys would be like, nah, this is bullshit. We know Luna. Like he's wrote warrants for us. We've been a part of his operations. Everybody knows I'm by the book. And so, and that gave me at least a little bit of hope. Then we're driving. He's just like, hey man, you want me to stop somewhere so we can get something to eat? And I'm just like, I appreciate it, but I'm not hungry, man. Like let's just get this shit over with. So they bring me into the Larry D. Smith Correctional Facility, and they shut down the booking floor because of my prior job. And I remember thinking, this is where being in California is going to benefit me, because in California our jails are full, and we have what's we call Fed kicked. I don't know what the official term is, but we call it Fed kick. And what this means is because our jails are full, if you get booked on something that's a non-violent, and hold on, just getting something to see, make sure. Give me one more second. Give me 30 seconds real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. Good.
I muted there because there was somebody mowing the lawn. It was driving me nuts. Apologies. I was thinking, okay, were they still pursuing what was it?
Unregistered firearm.
The unregistered. Is that still in the charges?
Like at this time?
Yeah, I mean, or
the only charge. That's the only charge.
That's all they have.
Correct. That's the only thing he's facing at this point in the story. And it's the only thing he'll ultimately face is that charge.
This entire pursuit.
It's fucking bonkers.
It sounds brazenly stupid and brazenly bold, surprisingly.
Yep.
Well, this is the part of the story where I realized the power that the FBI and federal government has. Because remember, this is a local agency that executed the arrest for them. And this is a state jail. A state, a local jail that I'm being taken to. And like I said, so a Fed kick means that jails are full. If you get arrested in California for a non-violent offense, they're going to take you in, they're going to photograph you, fingerprint you, and then you're just going to get kicked out with the court date. And I know this because it happens all the time. I arrest gang members all the time. I've arrested the same gang member in a stolen vehicle 4 times in 1 week. Because he gets Fed kicked. This is California. And the running joke is they're going to be out before I'm done with the report. And so I'm like, at least this is going to benefit me because I don't have to worry about the $250,000 bail that my family doesn't have.
Right.
Because I'm going to get Fed kicked. So when I get there, I tell the booking sergeant, I go, hey, I'm going to get Fed kicked, right, Sarge? And he's like, we're checking something. And so I'm like, all right, whatever. Well, 20 minutes pass, 30 minutes pass. And this is a long time because booking is a very busy part of the jail. And like I said, they have the entire booking thing shut down to process me. And then I see them coming out with the orange jumpsuit. It says Riverside County inmate. And I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. And I'm like, obviously, I'm not getting Fed kicked. And so then I go through this whole process where I got to get naked in front of people I used to work with and deal with that humiliation process. And I get this jumpsuit on, we go through that process. So then we start walking down the hall, and I kind of have an idea where we're going because I've been here to interview people. So I kind of know where they're taking me because the protective custody area is over there. And I'm like, they're probably going to put me in with the PC guys. Because if you put me in general population, I'm dead before sunlight. If you put me in PC, at least I got a fighting chance. You can deal with that number of guys.
What is PC for?
Protective custody. This is going to be where you send like the snitches. This is where you're going to send, the pedos. This is the people that if you put them in GP, like someone's going to kill them. So you put them in PC. The issue is in PC, they have their own rules and things that they deal with. You know what I mean? But in my mind,
cops still aren't favorable people.
No, they're not. So I already kind of had my idea of how I was going to approach this and how I was going to survive the next couple of days, or however long it took. Like this is what I'm planning. Like, this is I'm doing a survival plan.
Just a brief outside observation from the beginning of this to where you're at. This sounds like just a long hazing ritual, man. The whole thing.
It's the process is the punishment.
Yep.
And so then we turned down a hall that I'd never been before. So I'm like, where are they taking me? This isn't PC. It's not GP. And then from that hallway, it takes me down another hallway, and they put me in solitary confinement. And let me tell you, for someone, like I said, not only have I never been arrested, like I've never been inside a jail cell ever in my life. And the first time you go in a cell and it's solitary confinement, let me tell you, the mind fuck was on. And I've told Candace, I'd rather go back to Iraq for 2 tours than go back to that solitary confinement cell.
Obviously trying to break you.
It was, 8 feet by 11 feet, little LED light to, illuminate the room enough to read. It's no pillow, it's a concrete bench bed with like a laminate over it. You have a thick wool blanket and a thin sheet, no pillow. You have a steel toilet. Your water faucet is the tank of the toilet with a water faucet that's there, and then a thin steel shelf that had 2 books on it. One book was World War II, and then another book was called, as a matter of fact, was this.
Oh, wow.
And I remember looking, I'm like, I don't need to read about World War II, and I don't need to read about hell because shit, I'm living that shit right now. Like, that was my thought process. And so I'm sitting there, and yeah, this one's surfacing some emotions, Brian. I haven't been here in a while. I don't know why it's really, I've told this story a lot of times, and it's affecting me right now. I'm sitting on there.
Have you told it since the day?
Yeah, I've told this story. Yeah, I don't know. It's hitting now, man. I'm sitting on this bench and I'm looking down at this orange jumpsuit that says inmate, and I'm thinking, how the fuck did this happen? Like, I've served my country, I've served my community and my state. I've been shot at 4 times as a cop. Can't even count how many times as a Marine. I watched my partner burn alive in front of me. I did everything right. I was raised that if you do everything right, like, you don't have to worry about this. This is being in jail or prison's not a concern. And I'm like, I've done everything right. And not only that, but like I've served my country. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking down, and wearing the socks they gave me, these plastic brown sandals. There's a hole in the sock. And I'm just thinking, how many people have worn this sock before me? And it's just, I feel the weight of the world, because the other thing that's hurting me is, like I said, I had a newborn. She's 2 months at this time. She was born in November. And I'm thinking, every night she's gone to bed, she's been, between me and mom before we put her in the bassinet. And right now, dad is gone. And she's too small to understand why. She just knows, this person that I feel love and warmth from is not there. And I remember thinking, like, is she sad? Is she scared? I know mama bears with her, But and I remember this is all weighing in on me. I'm like, yeah, I tell my son on his birthday that things, or the following day once I got him back, that hey, everything's gonna be better, and things got worse. So now I look like a liar to my son, and I just remember I get on my knees and I just tell God, I don't know why this is happening. And I'm not even asking you to get me out. Just give me peace to get through it. And I just got there on my knees, and then I sat on the bench, and then you have no understanding of time. There's no windows, there's nothing. You're in a solitary confinement cell with a light that's never going to turn off. And I remember I'm tired, but I can't sleep. I'm trying to get comfortable. I can't. So after a few hours, I go and I grab this book, and I said, I'm gonna get myself fatigued, so I just crash out. And I almost finished the book. And I remember reading in that book, and literally I did. I read it till I fell asleep, and it was my hell. I realized I'm living my hell right now. I don't have to die. I'm living my hell. Now, while all this is going on, my family, my mom was over, helping, my family, my missus, they get a hold of my attorney. My attorney she's dialed in at the time. She's represented law enforcement agencies, so she's good to go. They called the jail before I even get to the jail. That's how fast my attorney was working on this. And they had already secured bail money for me. My mom put her house up as collateral. My attorney, because remember, this is after hours, but my attorney, through her connections, was able to get a bail bondsman to facilitate all this stuff. And so my mom puts her house up as collateral, and she calls the jail, and she's like, hey, he's not a keeper. Keeper means don't book him in. We have bail for him. And this is, so while I'm going through the process, this is what they tell my attorney. You can't bail him out because there's a parole hold. Now, for those that don't understand what this is, my attorney's reaction is, and to quote her, the fuck do you mean? He's never been arrested in his life. To have a parole hold means that you went and committed a felony crime, got arrested for a felony crime, went to court on a felony crime, either pled or were found guilty of the felony crime, got sentenced to prison, went to prison, served a portion of that sentence, and then got out on parole. And while you're out on parole, you violated the terms of that parole, and a parole officer issued a parole hold for you, which is a warrant.
Sir, I'm sorry. My blood is boiling. I'm crashing. Like I'm maintaining calm. My brain is literally boiling. I can feel it. Okay.
Just real quick, and the 250,000. And were you the breadwinner in your household?
Yes.
Your wife wasn't working at this time, right?
No. Well, she was. She was, but there's no way our family's surviving on. We're barely surviving with my income.
Right. That's what I'm getting at. And on top of that, now you have to come up with a way to either get 250,000 cash, or probably, is it 10% in California? So
I knew that this was the math that was playing out in my head while being transported. I knew that we had enough income to last 30 days with regards to food and diapers and things like that. I knew her income could cover groceries and it could cover diapers. Like I knew that was covered. I knew once we got on beyond the 30 days, she's not going to be able to cover the utilities. She's not going to be able to cover rent. And we got 90 days before she served with an eviction notice. So in my head, I had a 60-day window under worst case scenario before, because once we cross into that third month, she's going to be evicted. And what am I going to do from behind bars and her having a newborn? So I knew I had 60 days to try to figure shit out, to get money to my family. And then, like I said, I have no idea where the bail is going to come from. And, it was a shitstorm is where we're at financially. And reason being is because you got to remember, I was already in a 2-year fight with my agency. So my money that I had saved up, I had to cash out my retirement. I had to sell my home, sold my motorcycle, sold all the stuff that I had spent the last 20 years of my life accumulating, all sold in the past 2 years, which the FBI knows. The FBI knows because we talked about my bank account. They were questioning me about where I was earlier in the year because they're like, why were you over here by Sacramento? And I was like, I wasn't by Sacramento. I was by Santa Clarita or Santa Clara, whichever one's up north, because we're doing canine training. And I go, I can provide you photos from that training. You can call the company that I work for. That's where we did our training. So it tells you how far back that they went to investigate me prior to anything even remotely to do with January 6th. So they know everything about me, including my financials. And so the $250,000 was because they knew I couldn't afford it. And they knew that in order to do that, I was going to have to find some collateral. And so they knew that once whatever collateral I found, which they probably knew is either going to come from my mom, because they know that they probably did the workups on my parents as well, and they knew the only one that owned property was my mom, and so they knew once we expended that collateral, then there's zero money for an attorney,
Right.
and the only resolution at that point is you're going to take a plea, because that's what everybody else was doing.
Yep.
And so during the middle of the night, they end up contacting my attorney, and they said, "Oh, we figured out it was a clerical error." By this time, I'm booked. So what they were doing there was they knew I was going to get Fed kicked, and the only way to make sure I didn't get Fed kicked was to book me. So this way, only two things were going to happen: I'm going to stay in there till my arraignment, or I'm going to have to make bail. So they forced me into paying the bail when I was going to get Fed kicked and not have to, and then I could have used that collateral for an attorney. So that's that process. So then the worst part, and the rest of this will kind of fly through really fast. The next day, I find out that I'm getting released, and I go through that process. And let me tell you, man, it's uncomfortable when you're seeing these inmates, and then they look at you because now I'm out of solitary confinement, and that they know who you are, and then you see the whispers, because at that point, anybody comes within 4 feet of you, I'm already thinking, all right, here comes the shank. And so it just, you're conditioned black times 10 the entire time. And so finally, they take me to the gate of the jail. And I remember they're pulling me out of the van. I'm handcuffed, and I can see my fiance on the other side of chain link fence that's got barbed wire, and there's armed deputies everywhere, and she's looking at me as they are unhandcuffing me, and they're giving me the paper bag and walking me to the gate. And I remember thinking, I promised this woman the most glorious life, and she's picking me up from a fucking jail. Like, that's
humiliating.
I felt humiliated. I felt not like a man. I felt ashamed. And this is all knowing that I did nothing wrong, but this is just how I felt. And so, of course, she gives me a hug. She's in tears. We get in the car, and now I'm learning what happened. She's explaining this story to me about the parole hold and the bail and all that. And we're like, we'll figure this out. And so now we fast forward. I'm working with my attorneys. My attorneys are communicating with the FBI and the DA during this whole time. And we get to August the 4th of 2021. Now they know I'm represented. They know I have an attorney. They make zero attempts to contact me. They make zero attempts to contact my attorney. I get a knock at the door. I open the door, and there's FBI Special Agent Armenta, and right behind him is JTTF Detective Candias. And I'm like, what do you guys want? And they're like, well, we're here to return your electronic equipment. Now, remember, I'm a cop. And so in my 14 years, I've never returned evidence to a suspect. I've never returned evidence to a victim, a witness, anything. We don't do that. That's not SOP.
Well, once they have an attorney, all of your correspondence are through that attorney.
Absolutely, because now you're looking at prosecutorial misconduct.
Right.
And so they're like, yeah, we're here to return your equipment. So I'm like, okay. So when they walk off, I'm thinking, that ain't SOP, because just so people understands, is the procedure for this is if you're going to return equipment, one, the officer, the agent, the detective doesn't do that. Your evidence tech will call up whatever said person is and be like, hey, your property is ready to be released. You need to show up at the agency with 2 forms of ID. And this is the process. Like, that's how that happens every single time. So I'm already there thinking, what's really going on, And so They come back after a few minutes. They're probably gone 4 minutes. They come back and they have this bag with my laptops and my phones, like all the stuff I told you guys they took. And they get ready to give me a property receipt. Well, actually, I got ahead of myself. I'm getting ahead of myself. Before they go to the car and they're there, because now I'm aware of what's going on, I make this statement to Armenta. So this is outside my front door. So I'm standing in front of my door. Armenta's in front of me, facing me, and Candice is behind him, facing him. And I tell him, I go, you guys realize the American people do not trust the FBI anymore, because now we're 8 months into this shit and we've seen this happen like everywhere. And so Armenta says, why do you say that? And I go, you just had Christopher Wray go on national television and tell everybody that he has seen no evidence of BLM or Antifa being at J6. And I said, anybody with a phone at a minimum has seen the videos of Jesus, what's that kid's name?
Jesse, no, Jaden
No.
X. Jaden X.
What
Jaden
Sullivan.
Cross, right?
No, Sullivan. John Sullivan.
John Sullivan. Jaden X was his handle.
Yeah. I go, as a minimum, everybody's seen the videos of John Sullivan, like at a minimum. And this is what Armenta tells me. Like he slipped here. And I have my theories of why I think he slipped. But he goes, well, of course he said that. He can't say something that's going to help him being Trump. And so I look at him, I go, he's under oath. I go, I think Biden's a complete ass clown. But if somebody asks me a question about him, I got to tell the truth. Candice was behind him. And after Armenta said that, Candice kind of looked like, the fuck did you say, dude? And so when they saw my reaction and what I said in response to it, that's when they're like, well, we're going to go get your stuff. And that's when they go and disappear to go get my electronics and then end up bringing it back with the property receipt. So immediately following that, I get on the phone with my attorney. And he's just like, why didn't you tell me? I said, they didn't tell me they were coming. I figured they called you. He's like, they didn't call me. And he was pissed. He's like, they can't contact you. He goes, we've been in contact with them. They know we're representing you. And now here's the reason why I think they showed up. They showed up on the anniversary of my partner's birthday.
Everything's a psyop here, man.
And this is the partner that burned alive in front of me. And they know this because in that interview, one of the last things they said, Candice, because Candice works at Rialto, my partner was a reserve officer at Rialto PD before he came to our agency. So Candice knows who Jermaine Gibson is. And he told me, he goes, yeah, I know you tried to save Gibson and you couldn't. Like a jab, before leaving.
What in the fuck?
And so then they show up on his birthday. And I'm thinking, because they know historically on my social media before it was taken down, I'd always put a shout out on the anniversary of his death and the anniversary of his birthday, or the day following. And so I think they had this expectation of, let's show up. Maybe he's angry, maybe he's emotional, maybe he's under the influence, maybe something like that we can use to articulate in this report to, so there's some, meat to these bones that we came after him with. And of course, that wasn't the case. So that ends that contact. So now I tell my attorney, get the audio, because you have an FBI agent saying that you could commit perjury. As long as you don't help your opponent, you could commit perjury. That's essentially what he's saying there. And so by this time, now I'm starting to share my story. And so now when I go on the next couple of radio shows and talk shows to share my story, I make this statement. I explain to everybody this part of the story. And I explain to them that this is Special Agent Armenta that just committed, that says it's okay to commit perjury. And I told everybody, as soon as we get the audio, I go, I'm going to release it to everybody. I even said this. I said, if they put a gag order on me, I will still release the audio, and I'll deal with being in contempt of court, because that's finally going to be something that I do wrong. But people need to hear it with their own ears that this is evidence that the FBI is willing to commit perjury. Well, my attorney's asking for this, every week, every other week between that and December. And finally we get to December. And the reason we're in December, this December of 2021, is because we filed a motion. We filed a motion to quash the warrant because it's bullshit. We filed a motion because in this time, they've given us the first seven or 8 pages of the warrant is all they've given us. And in those 7 or 8 pages, 3 times the FBI says they were contacted by a confidential informant, confidential citizen, confidential party. 3 times that's my social media got reported to them through a confidential informant. And the reason we were requesting an in-camera hearing to reveal the identity of the informant is because this takes us back to the very beginning of this show. I had won the case against my agency, and that corrupt chief was still present while this was going on. I believe he was still present, and we believe that somebody tied to because the agency is a good agency, but there was some bad apples in the administration portion of it. We believe that there was going to be someone, either them themselves or someone through Nexus, that reported it, because then guess what? We don't have to hire them back, because we can't hire a guy that's being investigated by the FBI, or not hire them, but bring them back. We can't do that. This was a way of them subverting the lawsuit that was coming down their way. That's what we believe. That's where this was stemming from. And so we get into December, and the DA that was handling my case.
Hold on. You skipped over the requesting the audio. You didn't conclude that segment.
Well, this is where we find out.
Oh, okay.
This all happens that same morning.
Okay.
Because remember, I have the criminal case, which is the weapons charge, and I have the civil case, which is the red flags law. Yeah, that's how they're keeping my guns from me. So these two cases are running parallel to each other at this point, all being ran by the FBI. And so we get to court that morning, and the DA comes over, and my attorney asks for the audio, and the DA tells him, FBI contacted me, and they said that audio doesn't exist. They never recorded.
What in the man? What in the hell?
So,
a quick question regarding the your request. You got 8 pages of the warrant. Are you normally allowed all of it?
So at different at different portions of the case, yes.
Okay.
Before you get to the hearings, they don't have to give you everything. You got to do these motions to get it. But as you're getting ready to go into prelim, yes, they have to give you the report, because you have to be able to start mounting your defense. And they, like I said, to this day, still don't have it. And it gets wild. This gets really wild. So they tell us that the audio doesn't exist, even though the FBI's own words is this is the biggest investigation in DOJ history. You're going to the home of an alleged suspect, and you're saying that the audio doesn't exist. I'll let everybody determine whether they believe that or not. So now we fast forward through these cases, and I'll get to the end here. In between that time and the end, we're doing all these motions. The motions are getting denied every time. Denied. I learned about a loophole, which this concerns me, and some of the legislation that I'm working on right now is to get this changed. There's a loophole that should scare every American that lives in a red flag state. When we did one of the motions to quash my case, because we showed that they left out exculpatory information, that alone should get the case dropped. The judge acknowledged it. He goes, even if I believe you, I'm still going to approve their search warrant, because they got a gun violence protective order. That's the formal name for the red flag law, the day before. So what the judge is saying is, even though he believes that the probable cause doesn't exist, he was going to allow the warrant in the scope of the gun violence protective order that they got the day before. And this is when we learned that they got it the day before. Because remember, we don't have the information. I assumed that they went and got these things all signed the same day. And we were able to get the information that shows, yes, they went a day early to get the gun violence protective order signed. And then they went the next day and got the criminal warrant signed, which means they knew this loophole existed, that is very dangerous. Because essentially what this means, for those that aren't tracking, it means if you live in a red flag state, I can, as a cop, if I'm a bad cop, I can say anybody called and made a report that you're a dangerous person to yourself or anybody else, and use that to get a gun violence protective order to get into the door of your house. And then once I'm in the door of your house, now I can search for a crime.
That's terrifying.
That is absolutely terrifying. So now we fast forward, and now they start to offer pleas. They realize that we're going to go the distance on this. I've been very clear. And every couple months, there's a plea. There's a plea offer. And I keep telling them, go fuck yourself. We're going to go to trial.
Good.
So we get into 2023, I think early to mid 2023. And I'm frustrated. My attorney's frustrated, because we have solid arguments, and the judge is denying every motion. So finally, my attorney's like, you know what? The civil case is coming up, and we get these guys on the stand there. So we're still going to get this information. They can't hide from the civil case. We're going to put these guys on the stand, and we're going to fucking destroy them when we make them testify. The morning that we show up to court for the civil case, DA comes up to us and says, hey,
You guys still got to show up, but we're dismissing the civil case. Now, happy moment because I just won half the battle, but it's also acknowledging they are not going to let us get these guys to testify. Because when they dismissed the civil case, right then and there, you just wrote me a check. You just said you violated my Second Amendment and my other rights, and you're dismissing the case. It's not like you went and fought it. You're literally dismissing it. That's an instant check, and they know that. They were willing to put that on the balance just to make sure those agents didn't testify. So, like I said, that was, I want to say, early to mid 2023. Then we get into the tail end of 2024, and this is where shit starts to really, because I'm feeling pretty confident as time's passing. We're crowdfunding, so American people, are helping me pay for my attorney. They're keeping a roof over me and my family. Like, the American people they've allowed me to fight. That's what they did. They allowed me to fight. And I promised everybody, I said, I promise you, I am not going to plea. We are going to go to jury trial on this. And I was in a position to that because the worst case scenario for me was 5 years in prison. That's worst case scenario for me. A lot of the J6ers, we're looking at 12 years, 15 years, 20 years. And when you give that kind of sentence to somebody who's 50 years old, 60 years old, 70 years old, that's a life sentence. Yep. And like I said, worst case, I'm not saying that 5 years is something I want to do, but at least to me, I'm looking at it as a tour. I'm going to go on tour, another combat experience, and I'll survive that, and I through the whole evolution of this, I'll ask the American people is if this comes down to worst case scenario for me, I will fight the years that I go in there. Just don't let my family go hungry and don't let them go homeless. As long as I don't have that worry, I can fight anything that they put in front of me. And the American people were there behind me. And so now we get into, I want to say it was around September, October of 2024. And an FBI whistleblower is helping me along with this process. And he's letting me know things to request that I didn't even know existed, because this is beyond the scope of things that I know. And I remember I'm showing up to court this morning and I'm pumped because I just learned about a communication software that we're going to subpoena so that I can learn about the conversations that they don't think I know about. And so I show up to court in the morning, meet with my attorney to give him this information so we can now subpoena this. Here's another one of those gut punches that we're going to deliver to the corrupt FBI. Because remember, this is all happening under Biden's administration. And as I'm trying to tell this to my attorney, he looks at, first thing I notice is his partner's there. And I'm like, he's never showed up to these cases. So I'm just like, that's odd, but I don't think nothing of it because I'm not thinking negative yet. I'm pumped. But then he says, you're going to plead guilty. You're going to go in there and we're pleading guilty. Now, this is a man that is a phenomenal attorney. And he was a cop. He knows gangs. He was a prosecutor attorney. He was a gang DA. Like, this guy has the equivalent knowledge that I do. His motivation has been on par with me the entire time. And I'm like, I look at him like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, we got this shit. We're winning. And he's like, do you want to go to prison? You're going to go to prison. You're pleading guilty. And I'm just like, I'm not going to say his name, but I'm like, man, I'm not. And he's like, then you got to fire me as your attorney. And I'm like, if I fire you, I'm not paying you what I owe you then, man. Like, I'm not paying the rest of this shit. And he's like, that's fine. When have you learned from an attorney to say, hey, you're good on the balance remaining of this shit? And remember, I am not prepared for this. And so now I got to go into the court. I got to tell the judge, because there's a formal process the way this happens. And I got to tell the judge that I'm firing my attorney. And in my head, I'm thinking, what the fuck am I going to do now? Like, we're almost 4 years into this evolution. I'm thinking, is there time to get another attorney? They're going to want a retainer, so am I going to be able to come up with 20, 30, 40, 50 grand? Because at this time, attorneys know that you can make bank off these J6 cases. Yes. I'm like, how do I turn around to the people that have supported me and say, hey, we got to start all over? Like that's just, people don't have that money. So I'm stressed the fuck out. And so I go before the judge. I tell them that I'm firing my attorney. So the judge tells me that and my attorney had told me this. He goes, they're going to sign you a public defender. So I'm anticipating that. And the judge says, well, we can't give you a public defender yet because we don't know if there's a public defender that can represent you, because we have to do a conflict of interest panel. And the reason being is because there's what because I was a cop and a detective, a lot of these public defenders, I went against them. And so they need to see if there's one that exists. And I was not familiar with this scenario. So I reached out to some people within the court family to, this is, following, a few hours following this event, being like, hey, bring me up to speed. What is this? And they're explaining it to me. So I'm like, so what you're telling me is they're going to give me the boot? The only public defender that's going to be able to represent me is a boot. Because everybody else, because like I said, I was good at my job. I've been against every senior public defender that's there. That's the kind of people they would put against me in my cases. So now you're telling me I'm going to get the rookie? Like, fuck. So I said, hey, let's look at this tactically. I'm going to get a private attorney, but at least I'll use this to at least buy me time to figure shit out. And so I said, well, I'm just going to go through the motions with this public defender, but I know in my mind, I'm going to transition to a private attorney later on. So I go to this first meeting with him, and lo and behold, this dude did his fucking homework. I'm in this meeting with this young guy, this young man, and he's bringing up shit that I hadn't even found yet. And he's talking about a strategy, and I'm just like, he piques my interest. So I go from this to like, you got my attention, man. And so I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, all right, this is good, but I still got trust issues, because this is the public defender's office. I said, but I can at least, now I can, I'm thinking tactically, I'll use this guy to, start going through these motions and things that I need that'll probably cost me 10, 15 grand a pop with the private attorney. We can accomplish this here. And then before we get to jury trials is when during the course of this, I meet him, I meet the investigator that's assigned to this case, and we're a phenomenal team. And so, and I pray about it. I said, you know what? Maybe this is the way we're going to go, because let's be real. Let's be honest with ourselves. We can't afford a private attorney. It ain't going to happen. Not going to happen. And so now we fast forward into January 13th, 7 days before Trump's inauguration. And well, let me rewind to December. I show up with the public defender, and the DA's office offers a plea. And Brian remembers this. They offer a plea I have never heard of in my life. As a matter of fact, I reached out to someone who I respect dearly in this field and gave them the plea, and they're like, you have to take that. That's the golden goose eggs of pleas. You have to take that. And what they offered, this is what they told me. If you plead guilty, we will change it to a misdemeanor charge, 0 probation, 0 restitution, which I'm like, restitution of who? There's no victim in this crime. 0 restitution. And the following day, you can file for an expungement and the DA will support it.
Whoa.
So in other words, all you're going to do is sign guilty. And the second you sign guilty, everything's over.
That's the moment that they realize that you're going to fight it the whole way. They have absolutely nothing. They're going to wear this egg on their face. It's not even an egg. They're wearing the whole chicken on their face, and that they fucked up. That's the you done fucked up moment right there. And
as long as this show is seen to the people listening, this is still a summary of everything. We could talk hours to cover every detail. And Brian knows a lot of these details. And my response was, tell them to go fuck themselves. They're going to testify. And he looked at me and he tells me, he goes, I will deliver the message, because you understand what you're putting in the balance here. I said, I do. Now, what made it hard for me is I had to communicate this to my family and my fiance and my father, 2 of the people that I love extremely and trust more than anything, were very, very angry with me. I actually talked to my fiance first and my father about 2 or 3 days later. And I remember a lot of things she said were because of fear and hurt and anger, but she's just like, who's going to take care of us when you go to prison? Because she's looking at this through the lens of a normal person. She's like, every time you tell me that you have a home run, the court tells you no. She goes, you've seen how much they've lied. She goes, you're not going to go to a fair fight. They're going to send you to prison. She's like, who's going to take care of us? Who's going to take care of your daughter? She goes, I can't do this on my own. And I told her, I can't say that I did something I didn't do. I go, the second I say I'm guilty, everything I did as a Marine, every friend that I lost got hurt, my partner that died in front of me, every sacrifice that I've made is in vain, you know? And so then a few days later, I talked to my father and, he's yelling at me, who's going to take care of your family? Who's going to take care of your kids? And they couldn't understand then that if I go to prison for 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years, I can survive that. I understand people are like, well, that's pretty selfish. And I can understand that opinion. If I sign guilty, that's a sentence for the rest of my life.
Mm.
I gotta live the rest of my life with knowing that I don't represent anything that I thought I did. It's a prison that there's no bars, but it ends me. And how can I look at my kids? How can I look at this woman, my parents, anybody, and be like, I'm not who you guys thought I am? Like it ends my life, and that's how this all looked to me. And so I told him, you just got to trust God. We just got to trust God in this situation. And now things I didn't communicate with them is I had already told, my private attorney at the time and my public attorney is, I know I'm asking you guys to fight an uphill battle. And I understand we probably won't win when we go to jury trial because we're not going to be able to present a lot of this stuff to the jury. I need you to set this case up for an appeal because we're going to win the appeal. By that time, Trump's going to be in office. The DOJ is going to, it's going to start getting its filtration process. And I'll probably have served a portion of my sentence, if not, a lot of it, because I understand that the appeals process takes. I understand the money that's involved in it. And I said, but, the American people will get behind us on this. I know it. I go, but just set me up for the appeal. Because in my head, I knew that's where my fight was that's where I had a fighting chance.
I just got to add, it's a very inspiring bit of faith to hear, especially given I came from a No Kings protest. Very disheartening. This is beautiful. Thank you. That's all. Keep going.
And the reason I learned things along the way, and because I kept thinking every time, and she was right, every time we thought we had a home run, it got denied. And so eventually my private attorney told me, he goes, hey, we got to stop filing these motions. And I said, why? Eventually he goes, because here's the thing, all these motions that we filed, we don't get to bring them up in jury trial anymore. And I go, what are you talking about? Because remember, this is his expertise, not mine. Because the second we bring it up, the prosecution's going to be like, this has already been dealt with. This is all, and a judge is going to, he's going to overturn, our requests for these conversations. He's going to sustain it. And so then I'm like, so I'm trying to beat this war before we go to jury trial. But in doing so, now we're handicapping ourselves when we do go to jury trial. And that's when I realized then, okay, now we fight for the appeal. And that's the reason the certificate, the paper that was registered with the DOJ and the FBI and all that was going to be, we're saving that for the jury. We're saving that one for the jury. So now we get into the morning of January 13th of 2025. So about 10 months ago. And my attorney calls me and he's like, you need to get to the court now. I was on a space just to make people laugh for a second. Imagine that Alpha was in a space in the morning.
Alpha on a space? No way. So you don't know this, Eli, but this dude permanently has a AirPod in his ear on Twitter Spaces nonstop.
I tell people Twitter is the trenches of the information warfare.
2 a.m. in Deadwood. We're drunk in a pizza parlor at 2 a.m. And I'm like, where'd Alpha go? And he's over at the table on a Twitter space talking shit.
Interestingly enough, I maybe just a month or a month and a half ago rejoined the Twitter or X space myself, and you're absolutely right. Actually, it was also soon after Charlie Kirk's demise that does seem to be the place. So yeah 100.
I look at them as the virtual town halls of our age, and I'm in one of those, and so I tell people, hey, hold on, I got to take this call, and he tells me, I think they're dismissing your case. So I'm like, hey, motherfucker, pardon my French. There's a big difference between you think and they are. Like, what's going on? He's like, I'll figure it out. Get here. So I'm hauling ass to the court. My heart's racing. I'm excited, but I don't want to be excited. Like I'm dealing with that emotion. And I get there. He meets me on the third floor of the Indio Superior Court, and he goes, "You're winning." He goes, "It ends today." He goes, "You're about to walk in that courtroom, and they're dismissing your case. Are you sure?" He goes, "They're dismissing your case." And I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "Don't be asking me shit I can't tell you yet." Right. He didn't say those words. I want to make sure I protect this guy, but he delivered the message in so many ways. So I'm like, "It's fine." He goes, "I got to make you, by law, I got to tell you, you can reject this offer if you want." I'm like, "Man, this is my miracle. What are you talking about? Let's get in there." And I did tell him something, and we'll get into that. But I go into this courtroom. Now, I've been living this for 4 years. As a matter of fact, this is 2 days before the 4-year mark. Remember, January 15th is when they raided my home in 2021. We're January 13th of 2025 now. We go in there, and during this whole time, here's one thing: a shout out to the DAs that I work with, and it's a testament to my work ethic. None of the DAs from the office that I worked with all refused to take this case. And you're talking senior people that this can have an impact on promotions. They refused to take this. And because I still was being communicated with, what I learned from people, we'll say third hand, is they were like, "We know who this guy is, and this is bullshit." So they actually had to get a DA from the Southwest Division on the other side of the county to work with the FBI on this case. So there are good people that still are part of these institutions, and I want people to understand that. So I'm in, but it sucked because every time I would go into these courtrooms, I'm sitting in the defendant side. I'm looking at the side I used to be in. I'm looking at people that I was co-workers with, that I have friendships with, and I'm sitting here, listening, to me being talked about like a criminal. I'm sitting on the side with a lot of alleged criminals and known criminals. And now I'm in that courtroom and I see those people and my name gets called up, and the judge kind of had a smile on her face. It was a judge I wasn't familiar with. And it just kind of hints to me that she kind of knew probably a little bit of the backstory, is my assumption. And I hear the words that my case is dismissed. And I had a smile. I was probably shining, when that happened. And then I looked at my attorney like, "Don't forget to ask what we asked for, because I know how this system works." He goes, "Your Honor, we also like to get a court order for the release of all his property, to include his firearms, his ammunition, all this stuff." And the judge is, "Absolutely, submit all the detailed information behind that. I will get it signed." She looked to the prosecution. "Is there an objection to this?" Prosecution says, "No objection to this, Your Honor." All right, we'll get this signed in a few days and we'll get it to you so you can be made whole again, right? At least partially. And I go and I tell the world, we fucking won. Like, we won. Oh, you're on mute, Brian. So I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, my bad. It was on Y Chromes. I was trying to find the clip on Y Chromes when you called in and told us that it was over. And I think everybody had some cutting onions in their studios that day. It was a great day.
I remember because I was in my truck. I was in my truck talking to you guys, giving that information while you guys were live, because everybody was a part of the fight. Everybody, and I went home, and it was days of tears of joy for everybody. It's just my neighbor, my neighbor that provided the video that we saw of the raid. My neighbor made himself a target when he provided me that surveillance footage. But he is a man. Something that people don't know, when they did the press release on this, to make matters worse, remember, I'm a gang cop. I have active homicide cases and serious cases that are in the court. The FBI's press release, they provided my driver's license number, my exact home address to where I was living at the time, followed by the sentence, "We took all of his firearms."
What the? What?
They told
Everybody.
This is exactly where he lives, and he has no means of protecting himself.
And given your previous line of work, that is a damning thing to do. That is That's not even doxing at that point. That is an open invitation. Hey, this guy worked gangs. This guy went undercover. This guy infiltrated, groups and cliques. I mean, you said yourself you had pending capital crimes, capital cases ongoing, where if something happens to you, the case goes bye-bye. The case is gone.
The FBI, and this is somewhat of an assumption, but I don't think so. It's an educated one at that. During my gang career, there was a contract that was put against me.
Wow.
So they know that, this is a legitimate concern. There's a portion of that even made case law regarding 422. Interesting how turn of events that happened. But when that press release came out, I immediately contacted Twitter saying there's a safety issue here. Twitter denied it, said there is no safety issue. I'm like, it's literally in your terms of service, and they denied it. Remember, we're dealing with a corrupt Twitter at that point. I contacted the media companies that put these articles out and was able to get in contact with one of the writers, and I said, listen, you guys have you're assuming a lot of liability here, because you guys know my career, because I provided you sound bites as a detective. You know the cases that I've been involved with, and you just told every one of these fuckers where I live, and I don't have the means to protect me and my family. So if anything happens to my family, you guys are going to be part of being held liable for that. And so, and part of this was communicated via emails before the phone call, and I have all these emails still. And essentially, he goes, "So you want us to take down the article about you?" And I said, "No, I'm a First Amendment absolutist." I go, "What I'm telling you is my driver's license number, my exact address doesn't change the context of your story. You can redact that. It has zero impact on your story. All you, and you know this, because normally they'll report, the 12,000 block of this, or the 18,000 block of this, or the north end of the city. They never use an exact address when they're talking about a person, ever. And so I think it was like 2 days later, 3 days later, they ended up redacting it. But it's still, the next 6 to 8 months were probably the most stressful time for me. My son wasn't allowed to take out the trash. Nobody was allowed to check the mail. In the morning before school drop-offs, I always was the first one to walk outside, because I didn't want someone from my family to get shot because somebody was looking for me.
This sounds like the most publicized attempt at a hit, for lack of any better words here. And at this point, the onus would be on all of them to tell me they weren't trying to have you unalived.
That I have the same conclusion. I mean, me and Brian have talked about this. I think he has the same conclusion. We're all in agreement there. So now it brings us to where we're at now. We finally we shifted from a defensive posture into an offensive one. I've kind of been researching different attorney firms to bring the accountability back against them. The people would argue what's worse. To me, this is the worst part of the story. But in November of all this happening, in 2021, my mom ends up having a stroke. Super healthy woman, was still working. But this was very stressful to her. And she ends up having a stroke while she's at my house. And she has since recovered her full mobility. But she struggles. They forced her into retirement. I can have a conversation with her, because when she talks, I can understand about 70%, 60-70% of what she's trying to say, because I've learned what certain words, what she means by them. Like she doesn't call me her son, she calls me her sister. I love you, sister. This is kind of the life this was what was created for my mom. And we are going to sue the shit out of them, but there's no check that can undo what happened to my mom. There's no check that can undo me watching my family have guns pointed at them. There's no check that a bird, during the course of all this, a bird hit our back slider and set off the alarm during the early morning. And my daughter comes running into our room crying because she thought we were being raided again. Like you can't fix none of that stuff, but there's going to be an accountability for this. So in January, I get the court order to get all my guns and ammo back, and I go to the Rialto Police Department. That's where the FBI is storing all my stuff. And I get to the window. give them the court order, say I'm here for my property, provide all the ID and the evidence tech, and granted, it's not their fault, but she's like, we can't give you this stuff back. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I have a court order. And she's like, well, our policy is in the mandate from the state is you got to fill this release form to get your guns back. I'm like, that's policy. It's a mandate. Policy and mandate doesn't supersede law. This is a court order. And she's like, yeah, so we have a professional interaction, but I'm pissed, because Rialto's not in my backyard. It's depending on traffic, an hour and a half, 2 hours, to get out there one way. And so she gives me the link and I go, okay, well, if I do this, how long does it take? And she goes, well, it'll be about 6 months to 18 months. Now, here's the interesting part. Now, remember, the media said that I'm a corrupt cop, domestic terrorist, all these things. For those that don't know, they made me a quad esser. I got debanked. I was one of the first people to get debanked. Like they've destroyed my life and turned all this shit upside down. Every time we would fly for work, and people know this from Badlands because they witnessed it.
Yep.
Even audience members witnessed this. It was a 2 to 4 hour evolution to go through checkpoints because of being a quad S. Like my life, they destroyed it. I have a great resume, and I would apply at these jobs because the school district let me go because I was on probation with the school district. So I had applied at these good jobs, immediately got hired, got offered bonus packages. They would run my background and they would disqualify me. And finally, I had one of them that was cool enough to say, hey, man, you got to stop applying at these good companies because this is why you're getting disqualified. There's a flag popping up of a FBI/DOJ hit. And I'm like, but I'm innocent. I'm still going through the process. And he goes, but the problem is, even when you win your case, when you come apply to us, this is now in our internal files. So now when you come to apply, you're not going to you won't pass the filter process from the internal ones. He goes, so you got to stop applying at good places. He goes, or you're never going to have a chance to work at any of these places moving to the future. He goes, I hate to tell you, man, but you need to work at like Walmart or McDonald's. And I appreciate at least he had the fucking balls to tell me, you know what I mean? And it made us have to do an adjustment. But nonetheless, that's the kind of stuff that was going on. So, but what people don't understand, I share all that to say this. A few weeks after my case gets dismissed, I get a subpoena from the court that was charging me to testify as an expert witness in the gang cases again.
Oh my God.
So
You tell him to fuck off.
no, I did not do that because even though everybody told me, why didn't you? Because it's doing the right thing.
I know.
And when I would show up to court and I'd meet with the DAs and they gave me the hugs and they're just like, hey man, no, you don't have to hang out here with the civilians. Like, come over here with us. Like you're one of us again. Like the love and respect was there. That definitely wasn't absent. Their private cell phone numbers. It was like I got that part of my life back. But it's like it's just the irony there that now I'm testifying as an expert witness again. But the reason this impacts this part of the story is because now I'm in the courtroom as an expert witness again, and the gang members see Detective Luna's back, and you see the looks. So now it's like we need to expedite me getting my guns back because these guys know that I'm back in the game. And so when Rialto, the detective, the evidence techs denied this stuff, I was like, I even told him, listen, I'm testifying in gang cases again, like research my background. And so then they tell him, well, in order to complete, this is where shit just gets evil. In order for me to complete this California form, I need the serial numbers and all that stuff. I have the serial numbers to one of my weapons. I go, you guys took everything else. You took my cases, my paperwork, everything. I go, and the property receipt you gave me, that carbon copy is 4 years old. You can barely read it. And the ones I do read, they don't compare to the serial numbers that you guys released in the pub, because they even put my serial numbers in the public information report that they put out there. I go, one of them's right, one of them's wrong, and I don't have an idea of verifying which one. And if I submit this form, that's going to take 6 months to 18 months, and it's going to get kicked back to me or denied if there's a serial number that's wrong. So can you at least give me my serial numbers? Yes, we can do that, but you got to go to the records department to request that. So now I go, because they're in different locations, I go to the main police department, I go to the records department, and you go up there and you file a form of who you are, and why you're requesting this. So I do that, and they said, okay, somebody from records will contact you in 2 to 3 days. Eventually, that phone call comes, and it's a supervisor from the records department, and they're like, hey, we've denied your request for the report. And I said, well, how am I supposed to get my guns back? I have a court order, and you guys won't give me my guns back on the court order, a lawful court order. You're telling me to complete this form, and I can't complete the form because I don't have the serial numbers because you guys took everything, and now you're refusing to give me the information where the serial numbers are. They're like, yeah, but because the FBI wrote this case in the way it's staged, you're going to have to go to court and have them order us to give you the report. I mean, oh, the way they ordered you to give me my guns and you're not listening to that order, now you want me to do it for the report? I go, you guys realize I'm testifying in gang cases with no way of protecting myself right now. And essentially that is where we're at now. So since then, I went and bought a new pistol, went and bought a new rifle. And during that process, there was California, there's a 10-day cooling off period when you buy firearms, you go through the background process. And the guys that, and I'll give them a shout out, Turners, because phenomenal customer service. They know the whole story, well, I won't say all the details, but they know the gist of it. And they're like, no, listen, you're innocent, so you got nothing to worry about. So they ended up calling me, I think like on day 7 or 8, and they're like, hey, your background, we got to notice that there's a delay in your background check. And they're like, so there's 3 things that can happen. They're like, they'll approve it, they'll deny it, or it'll come back undetermined. And I'm like, well, okay, approve is what it'll probably happen. Deny shouldn't happen. What happens if it's undetermined? Like, well, I don't get that. And they go, essentially, if it comes back undetermined, it's like a denial, because what they're saying is they're telling the retail shop, we don't know if this guy should have a gun or not, so we're going to put the onus on you. So this way, if something does happen, we said we weren't sure, we put the decision in your hands. And so retail, large scale retail, Bass Pro Shop, different places, their policy is they just won't sell it. So so I was just like, man, if they do that, that's shady as shit. He goes, well, either way, they got 30 days. He goes, and if that does happen, he goes, you're probably just going to have to find someone who's willing to do a private sale and then find a mom and pop shop that will do the bill of sales and the DOJ paperwork for that stuff. So I'm just thinking, like, this is a fucking mess. Well, ultimately, the DOJ, the state DOJ came back and they approved it. And they gave me all this. So now I call Rialto. You said you have to know whether it's okay for me to own a firearm or not. And I have a new pistol and a new rifle, and I got the paperwork that you guys can all verify. So now I want to come pick up my guns. No, you still got to do that process. I'm like, but why? It's now, I can own firearms. You can verify all this stuff. And so there's a lot of lawsuits that are going to take place, but that is the whole story in what I would call a nutshell. Others would say, damn.
Sounds like you're taking on like 12 kingpins from like Marvel's Daredevil here. This is one of the wildest experiences I've ever heard described from the purview of you're literally patient zero of a J6er. I wish that wasn't even a term, that so many people had to go through so much shit. Wow.
There is something interesting. Oh, go ahead, Alpha.
A cool little thing that happened is prior to Trump becoming president, I was invited as a VIP to Trump's rally when it came to Coachella, in the valley where I live. And so I was like, absolutely, I'm voting for this man. I'll absolutely go to this VIP rally. Well, to go to VIP, for those that have done it, there's a lot of checkpoints you need to go through. Those checkpoints are manned by local law enforcement and Secret Service. And so as I'm going through this checkpoint, cops that know who I am, we work together, we're friends, and know that I'm in the battle with the FBI are like, what's going on here? I said, got invited as VIP. So, hey, have a good time, man. They're good guys. So I'm literally going through all this, going through Secret Service. I get my VIP seat, meet a bunch of other VIP people. And at the end of Trump's rally in Coachella, I went up to a man that I respect highly outside of Trump and had a conversation with him, and a good handshake and a photo. And that man would be Kash Patel.
Rock on.
And so, of course, that photo would get blasted all over social media. And I found it very interesting that he became the boss for the institution that was prosecuting me. So I would imagine the DA, when they saw that picture, was probably like, "What the fuck?"
There, Alpha, there's one thing that I think that was pretty important, speaking of Kash Patel, and that is the relationship, the interesting relationship that Special Agent Armenta has with a certain J6er. You want to expand on that?
Yeah. So during the course of this adventure, because you always ask yourself, we're all the hero of our own story, but in the big scheme of things, we're just a dude out in the world, right? And I recognize, who's Alfredo Luna, who's Alpha. Like, vast majority of people have no damn clue. So, I'm not important to the world as I am to myself. And so my question was always, why all this to come after me? I'm irrelevant in the big scheme of things. I don't have an impact on this. So why risk destroying the audio of making those, like, why go through all this? And then I find out that the special agent, Enrique Armenta, that was handling my case, was tasked with one of the most important cases in J6. So for those that don't know, Metropolitan Police Officer Michael Fanone, he's the one with all the tattoos. He's the one that came out on Time Life magazine. They made him the poster child. He testified before Congress with the other guys. He's the one that they tased me in the neck. They showed the picture of him being, carried, dragged through the audience. That guy. Well, Armenta was the one that was investigating his case. So if we showed audio that would have put Armenta in the Brady list and would have opened him up to an internal investigation and perjury, that would have destroyed every case that he's tied to, including Fanone's. And that would have been the beginning. That's Michael Fanone right there. That would have been the beginning of this internal collapse of what's going on. And again, what's it going to look like in the headlines for the media that does report? The officer handling Fanone's case says that it's okay to lie under oath. And so, it was probably getting destroyed, not so much because of me, but because who the special agent assigned to me was.
So, that was that story is crazy, man. I told Eli when I talked to him this morning, he had called me, and I told him, I said, you got to hear this story, man. I got to have somebody that has a fresh perspective on it, somebody that doesn't know anything about this story and how insane it is. And when you think about that, like if you told your story and left out what the charge was, and then at the end of the story asked somebody, like, what do you think he was charged with? What do you think he was accused of doing? You would think like running a cartel, murdering, a family, something insane. But in reality, it all boils down to a questionable law in the first place about having to register your guns and all that stuff. And then on top of that, it's a gun that is very, very, very well documented as yours. I mean, this should have been a clerical error the whole time. And instead, you go through 4 years. I mean, I don't even want to know how much this cost you. I remember, what was it? Was it last year? Alpha calls me up. It's in December, I think. And he calls me up. It's like 10 o'clock at night. It's late. And he says, can I tell this story?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely.
He calls me up and he says, hey man, what's going on? And, hey, what's up? Just watching TV. My wife was at work. It's late at night. And he says, I got to ask you the question that no man ever wants to ask another man. And I said, I don't even think he asked the question. I said, how much do you need? And I think it was like $2,500 or something like that. And I wired it to him like within 5 minutes of the phone call being over. But that's the toll, because he had to make a decision of, what was it, getting your truck from being repossessed, feeding your kids and getting them Christmas presents.
It was the electric bill, groceries, and presents, or the truck.
And I said immediately, like, and I know John has helped you out as well, our boss over at Badlands. And like, people don't understand that there's nothing to lose for these people that did this to him. They have nothing to lose. They're going to get sued. They're going to lose. You know, Alpha's going to get a nice little check, but it's all going to be on the backs of the California taxpayers. They don't have any personal interest in this. Some people might get a slap on the wrist, or, they might lose their job. Sure. But they put your family through hell, man. Not just financial hell, your mom having a stroke, your daughter now having PTSD, your 4-year-old daughter, your young adolescent kids, your son's 13th birthday. Like you said, one of the steps, I don't know that I would say 13 is becoming a man, but one of the steps towards becoming a man, entering your teenage years, some of the most fundamental, foundational years of a young man. There's nothing that they can ever do to repay you for that. And nobody is going to be held accountable. Nobody, other than, like I said, a slap on the wrist.
What little asterisks there on the nobody, because again, I know the industry, and I'm absolutely going to be suing every agency that was involved with this, every agency. But on top of that, as a cop, you can be held personally liable if you operate outside the scope of department policy. And that's why our attorneys always tell you, we got your 6 until you operate outside of policy. And then you could be sued personally. And there are a few people that I can prove operated outside of policy. Now, the agencies, there's no way out. They're going to be held accountable.
Mhm.
But the individuals, I'm going to present them with a question. And that question is, you can write a public letter acknowledging everything you did wrong and how you betrayed the badge, and then apologize, or I will sue you for everything that remains in your retirement. So you have a choice. Take what you need to protect your family, or put your pride aside and acknowledge you fucked up. And that'll be their choice.
And I hope that's very public.
Yes.
It will be. I will make sure, because I still have to figure out, because attorneys are expensive as shit. I got to figure out what firm I'm going to go with, but I'm going to make sure that it's in writing. I'm going to make sure it's something that, they can't remove it. They can't take it down. They can't amend it. It's something that will follow them for the rest of their life, as it should. But it also, because I do struggle with taking people's personal money when I know it's going to impact them, because what if they have kids in college? What if someone in their family has, like a medical condition, things that we just don't know. And, that's hard. That's hard to know that you can create, an adverse financial impact on someone when they're dealing with those things, regardless if they're a piece of shit, doesn't mean their family is. And so I want to make sure that there's an out to where, look, it won't cost you $1, just do the right thing.
That's why you're a better man than most people.
Something I briefly want to add. CanCon knows I was an atheist for quite a long time. It's only been the past 2 years that I've been making a daily active attempt to rebuild my relationship with Christ and the Lord. This story is one of those things that makes me think, if ever there were a purpose or a person chosen to go through such a trial, I do believe that you have been chosen. And I salute you, and I thank you for all of the trials, tribulations you continue to go through. And you have to already know, people like me, or civilians or otherwise, we're proud to support you in any way that we possibly can. And I'm just honored to even be on a platform where you're able to share this very important story. Hell, down the pipeline, I know this is not the goal. I hope to see movies and books, and this get put in the history books as a terrible example of what has happened in this country. So.
I think we'll see that. We've seen some good people out there make documentaries already. And I think as the years pass, those things will grow. I think as censorship gets removed, I think more people will have eyes on some of the documentaries that have been put out there. I do have intentions of writing a book at some point. I got to get this fight behind me. Me and my family are finally at a point where, we got our chins above water, but I'd like to get to a point where we're actually comfortable, and once we get there, then I can start to, entertain some of these other things that I would like to do. And what I'll say is, you know, I had worries just like everybody else. You know, I wasn't public with them because I didn't want them to know, you know. So I kept a lot of my worries and concerns in private. You know, I didn't want my wife and my kids and my parents to know about this because they're already stressed out. So you do become isolated because of choice, you know, and but it's faith, you know. I told everybody I ain't no saint, you know. I do my best, but I am putting my trust in God out there publicly. And in the end, you know, it worked out that God's more powerful than the government. God's more powerful than the FBI. That you can't beat God. And I do remember, I'll share this, CanCon. The one of the prayers I had towards, and this was after the firing of my private attorney, because like I said, that shook me. And I remember praying and telling God, you know, like I did in solitary confinement, just, you know, give me the peace to go through this. But in the back of the head, as you're saying this prayer, you're like, you know, God, you're going to get me through this, right? Like, you know, I'm going to be vindicated here, right? Like, you're going to clean my name. You're going to, like, this is, you know, like, you're praying for one thing, but your intent is also there as well. And what I heard or felt in this prayer at the end of it, it didn't make me feel more comfortable. At the end of that prayer, where I was expecting to feel relief that, yeah, there's no way God's letting me go to jail, what I felt was, I said that this would be successful. I didn't say it would be successful for you.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, you know, this may end up with me going to jail. Like, oh shit, you know, it became very, very real. And, you know, accepting that stuff is hard, you know, but like you said, you know, hopefully the more people that hear this story over time, if they're at a point in their life, you know, because my faith is isolated to my story, but the formula of my faith applies to anybody's struggle, whether it's medical bad news, you know, divorce, kids, whatever it is that you're going through life, you know, just, you got to have faith that it's going to work out the way it's supposed to, even though that may not be the way you want it to. It's going to work out the way you're supposed to. And the one thing that I've learned in life, you know, there's about a handful of times where I've been brought to the foot of the cross where I'm just like, this is it. This is that moment. You know, obviously this one takes the cake out of all of those combined. But at the end of every one of those moments, I've always come out with more than what I had preceding that moment, whatever it was in life. And God's been very consistent with that. And I see that unfolding now because the story sucks, but it also pushed me to making a podcast. And in that podcast, it pushed me to put information out there about certain things. Remember these things, right? And things surrounding the way we get people into office. I'm still trying to navigate the YouTube fears here.
Dominoes and ballot box ballets.
Yeah, you know, it got me to provide that information publicly to an audience that otherwise would have never heard it. And I remember getting my first email from a lady on my own company email, getting an email from a lady that says, it's kind of a funny one because I was like, I don't know if this is an insult or a compliment. She goes, but I tricked my husband into watching your show. And at the end of it, he said, there's no way in the world he's going to get one of these at all. So right then and there, I had already won because that's one life saved. I had already won. So that means no matter what happened in my story, I already was going to walk away with the victory. And then, of course, through time, more and more and more and more stories would come from that.
I'm real quick. I'm picking up on what you're putting down regarding these, and I can tell you, like, Stuck in the Middle got its first strike because Josh simply said he had COVID when he had COVID. You're allowed, like, I can just tell you, I've been on YouTube. You know, I haven't got kicked off. They're finally a lot more lax about it. You can even say the V word, but that's just inside baseball at this point.
So, all right. So we'll land this here. I want to, go around and give you guys either, final thoughts, plug your shows, of course. I do want to say, Alpha, we've been together now, I think, for about 3 years, right? SitRep was an OG Badlands program. So
first,
since October 10th, 2022, you and I have been doing shows every Thursday night. Now many more shows together, including on our own platforms and everything. We've obviously at Gart's, 10 guards now, 9 guards now that we've been able to hang out in person. And, we had the show last night that was, exonerating for Badlands. And I love everybody that we have over at Badlands, every single creator that's behind the scenes. There's not one person that I could say anything negative about. And, but I feel like you and I have a different bond, not just because of our shows together, but the Marine Corps bond, that kind of thing. And, man, I'm so fucking glad that this is behind you. I feel like, and I know I can't ever feel the emotion you have, but I feel it as, somebody that's watched this evolve since the day I found out about it. I've been, I've written articles about it. I've done all sorts of things, to try and get attention to this. And, you had the fucking guts to go the whole way with this, like you were saying, and you never back down, man. And that is something that is more admirable than you will ever know, and should be an inspiration to so many people that, yeah, they're going to try and fuck you, the government, anybody else. The punishment is the process, right? The process is the punishment. And you fought it the whole way, bro. And I am damn proud to be affiliated with you in that regard, and Semper Fi, man, to the fullest extent.
Semper Fi, bro.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and wrap this up. If y'all want any closing thoughts, plug your platforms, do whatever you want. Guys, thank you for tuning in. By the way, I'm going to be doing this a lot more because there's many more stories like this out there that YouTube has censored in the past. You could not tell these stories, and they need to be out there. So please share this show out. Subscribe to me, subscribe to Alpha, subscribe to Eli, to over at Stuck in the Middle and Progressive Patriot, and share these shows out, man. People need to hear the untold stories that went on over the last 4 years. And just one last thing, man, I don't give a fuck what your politics are. If you were a bleeding heart Democrat and you had this story, I'd platform you, because this shouldn't be a partisan thing. Obviously it's our side that got crushed on this, but I would platform this no matter who it was telling the story, no matter what their politics were. No American citizen should ever be treated the way that you were treated, especially with your service to this country and your community. Go ahead, Eli.
No, that's I have nothing more to plug. I think I've shared the sentimentality here. I'm honored to be a part of this. CanCon, I speak of you very often on Progressive Patriot is like the little vlogging aspect of me on YouTube. Stuck in the Middle is where I want to embody discourse, because, it is a volatile time in our country. But all that being said, it's an honor, gentlemen, to know you both, and I'm very much looking forward to being a part of it, at the very least, doing my part to share your story and every story like it. And one real quick takeaway from, me observing the No Kings protest, I had an interview that I did with somebody there. I finally got somebody aside. Total maniacs, by the way. I won't generalize and say all of them, but there's a complete lack of consistency in them wanting to offer the same grace of a voice. Just look at Charlie Kirk. And for anybody that's maybe on the other side of the aisle that starts to hear or hears people like Alpha and CanCon, please remember, it's just as important to call out bullshit if it's on your side too. That's why I walked away from your side. And then that's all I got, gentlemen.
All right. And let me make sure. I want to make sure we get Stuck in the Middle's URL right.
Yeah, just to add, Stuck in the Middle has been doing amazing for the past month and a half. Hit a milestone and goals we never really thought were possible. It's been around for like 5 years, but please feel free. It's an open platform to everybody, especially if we disagree. Phone calls, live panels, and I think we do a hell of a show too.
All right, I put your show in the link. And Alpha, where can people find you, brother?
Yeah, you can find me on Rumble, the Alpha Warrior Show. You can find me now on YouTube at the Alpha Warrior Show. Or you can just go to alphawarrior.tv. I'll be updating that with all the new stuff. Or you can get in the trenches of information warfare with me over there on X at X Alpha Warrior X. That is probably where I spend the majority of my time because we're still battling. There's a lot to be exposed and fixed still. So trying to do my part. I do want to share two photos real quick if you don't
Yeah,
mind bringing this
of
first one up.
course.
And this is from I posted this November 15th, 2024, and that is with me and the man. And remember, this is November of 2024, but this is what I wrote in the post. Something tells me this man, Cash Patel, is about to become very important, a name to remember. Who would have guessed that he was going to become
Quite on the nose.
the director of the FBI? Sometimes they're just really good at guessing. And before you bring this next one up,
Did you hold on? Did you think he was going FBI? We knew he was going to be in the administration. Did you think he was going to be FBI?
we knew he was going to be in the administration. That's what.
Yeah, that's all we knew. Okay,
Right.
I was thinking either CIA or DNI, but hey, let's go. Let's go.
Before you
Or
bring this
each.
next one up, because I know sometimes, if I was on the outside hearing my story, I'd probably have some doubts. I'd probably be like, that's a little too crazy. And, you sure you ain't making this shit up? Everything that I've said is verifiable. So what I'm going to share with you guys right now is a government document. It's called the Direct Declaration by Law Enforcement for the Walkthrough Arrest Warrant and Order. It's dated January 19th, 2021, the day before they arrested me. And the first sentence reads, or the first few sentences, Luna Jr.'s behavior is consistent with pre-incident indicators of extreme violence. For example, empirical evidence shows that persons motivated by violent ideation become increasingly radicalized and move through various stages prior to violence, which includes experiencing a precipitous event that acts as a trigger to carry out the attack. Notably, Luna Jr. advocates violence and is an adherent of emerging domestic extremism organizations. He has gone as far as posting messages and images of his discontent for government officials and advocates others to carry out violence. Luna is a former Cathedral City police officer and terminated from employment. He is a former U.S. Marine and fully capable of inflicting lethal violence.
Let me hold on one second. I'm trying to get this pulled up because we're living it, guys. We're living it.
So for those that aren't tracking,
Look at me. Positive for Howard Marks. I'm placing you under arrest for the future murder of Sarah Marks and Donald Dubin. It will take place today, April 22nd. It's placing you under arrest for the future murder of Sarah Marks and Donald Dubin. It was take place today, April 22nd. I'm placing you under arrest for the future murder of Sarah Marks.
For the future murder, pre-indicators, pre-crime indicators. Sorry, go ahead, man.
this is an official document, folks, that I've written hundreds of. This is where we talk. This is where I write my probable cause. This isn't probable cause, folks. This was thought crime. This was pre-incident. This is pre-crime. If this is the threshold that law enforcement operates now, give me 100 guys and I will eradicate gangs in a month in this country. You can't, and we shouldn't. This is not what our Constitution allows. This is not what our forefathers saw in the future of the greatest country ever. This experiment we call America. This was not that. And this is a legal document written by a government official that says, yes, we are.
You know, it dawned on me when you pulled that up. There was one thing that I think you forgot to hit on, and it is extremely important. Normally, I'd say we're at almost 4 hours, and I would say let's just end it here. But this is very important, and it is the mix-up between the term confidential informant and a human source, and how they botched that up when they wrote your warrant. When they wrote that warrant.
Such an important thing. I'm glad
Yes.
you brought that up. So when we went and filed the motion to reveal the identity of the informant, the DA, same one that says the FBI says they didn't have audio, the DA comes and says, hey, the FBI just talked to me and there is no confidential informant. It was a mistake. They meant to write anonymous party. Now, the reason this is important, again, is I'm considered an expert in search warrants in the state of California. is if I go to a judge with a search warrant to violate someone's Fourth Amendment, and it's an anonymous party, the judge is going to ask me 1,000 questions, as he should, because I understand it could be a neighbor, an ex, an employee. There's so many people
Disgruntled,
with motive. And the judge wants to make sure that, hey, listen, if we're going to violate this person's Fourth Amendment, we need to make sure that there's a lawful, logical reason to do that. And so they're going to ask you 1,000 questions, and chances are they're not going to approve it. It's why I never wrote a warrant based off an anonymous party. There's a different way we handle that circumstance, because you just know it's not going to get approved. Now, the other end of that spectrum is if I go to a judge with a search warrant where I'm identifying a confidential informant, the judge weighs that very heavy, because he knows there's a checklist that I went through that determines you don't just call anybody a confidential informant. Like there's a process to that. And with that, the judge, there comes, witness protection, there comes integrity, there comes prior documented circumstances of this person being a reliable informant. There's a lot that falls into that nature. So chances are a judge is probably going to approve it. So when they said that there was a mistake, remember, we've never seen the whole warrant, but just in the early pages, 3 times. 3 times. I would have gave you one. I would have said, maybe you were tired. Maybe you're not going to get away with it twice. You're not going to get away with it 3 times. And if we get the rest of the warrant, which I imagine is probably over 100 pages, it's probably in there another 20 times. That was either you lied then to manipulate the judge, or you're lying now in order to protect who the confidential informant was. And there's a reason you're protecting them. And we think we know that reason. So one of those 2 things is the only logical explanation of that situation.
There's only so many people that saw that post that could have tipped somebody off as to what's on that post. I wonder if X or Twitter tracks that. So, all right, Alpha. Thanks, brother. Eli, thank you for sitting in here 4 hours. I hope Alpha blew your mind. I told you that he would. And
I've learned to never be disappointed when it comes to a CanCon feature, and I love it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all so much for tuning in. Again, please share this show out. Hit that thumbs up on your way out. Subscribe to both of these 2 people right here. Give them a subscription, and just hit the follow button. Turn the notification bell on here so you guys know when I go live. I'll be doing it more often. Promise that. And this is my 2nd show already today. So, Alpha, if you can, I'm going to play the outro here. Can you stick around just for a moment after?
Yeah, absolutely. And just so everybody knows, that little 2-month-old girl grew up into a beautiful 4-year-old princess who will be 5 next month. And now she also has a little sister who is known by Badlands as the Carpet Commando Baby Terrace, because she is something else. And that is my little Charlotte.
She is a sweetheart. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in again. Stay frosty. God bless each and every one of you. God bless America. Make the fortune cookie country pay for this.
It is a reliable source. It's what they used to lock us up for January 6th. The same data. The same exact data